Use the same password.
Welcome, everybody, to the regular session of the
Can you do
Tuesday,
that?
December 13th Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'll read the agenda. We just came out of executive session, 7 o'clock, although a little late. Open session, citizens input, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair, 48 hours in advance of the meeting. 7:10, Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee, Chairman Bob Correa, 2016 Annual Report. 7:20, Toby Keese, I Love This Bar and Grill, discussion vote, change of manager. 7:25, Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, Finance Director, budget discussion. 7:55, Selectmen's update. 8:05, Town Manager update. 8:15, Assistant Town Manager update. Doc, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is anybody here for citizens input? Seeing none. Mr. Correa? You're up. This will be the 2016 annual report.
We're back on schedule.
No need to thank me.
We have four of us here, we're just trying to decide who's gonna take the two seats.
Who's gonna be in the final?
We can pull
can
up
add
some
another
extra
one.
It's a big
chairs.
decision.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
We'll share this one, you get that microphone.
So, normally you get this report up front, but lack of communication between us, it didn't get to you guys in time, but we wanted to get on the docket, make sure that we got it in for the yearly report. So if you want to glance it over, otherwise, maybe Bob and Deb can just give you some highlights of what we've done this year and what we look forward to next year.
Sure. Well, I'd like to thank you for having us here tonight. Four of us out of the 7 are here representing the committee. 3 are tied up with sickness, etc. I'm here more as the ringmaster of the group. The group is very engaged. That no one person does everything, everybody puts in as much as the other, and that shows in what we've accomplished this year. Now, this is the 3rd year of the committee. If you want me to read it, read the accomplishments,
Just kind of pull out some
Would you like us just to highlight them?
highlight.
Okay, highlights.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so if people are watching at home, they're not familiar with the committee, it really is, this was established by the Board of Selectmen, and so we are an appointed committee, so 7 of us are appointed directly by the Board of Selectmen, each to represent a different constituency group, just public education, council on aging, human services. Bob's our chairman and member at large. But, so what really, in a nutshell, what our job is to raise awareness and educate the community about child sexual abuse, how it happens, when it happens, what we can do as a community or a village to help prevent that in the future. Our town certainly has been rocked by this type of, this issue in the past, so what we're trying to do is put as many things in place to raise awareness and have as many eyes as we can on the children in the community, to train as many adults as we can, whether they're employees, whether they're parents, whether they're volunteers in the rec department or for youth sports, so that we, as a village, are protecting our children to the extent possible in this modern world. So some of the things that we did this past year that we're most proud of, I know that you're familiar with because we brought the home rule petition before the town meeting, and testified at the state level. Mr. DeVellis was there, and Reverend Bill Dudley, myself, Jim DeVellis testified to explain the purpose of the petition. and why it is so important to our community and to any community. And really what the testimony was about was that we want to establish a higher level of accountability in the town, so that not just the current state mandated reporters get training in child sexual abuse, but that we expand that definition to include not just public school employees and certain people in town, such as the police and fire department, who are public safety officials, but also to expand it so that anyone who comes into contact with the youth in our town is also under that law locally, under that petition, that we can establish a local home rule petition to make anyone who's responsible or who works directly with children to have the right training so that they can recognize signs or at least address a concern that they may see and know who to go to. So all of our public school employees are trained. That includes absolutely everyone, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, faculty, you name it. And now we believe we've trained about 1,200. I think we're up to about 1,200 in the community in total, which is, quite an accomplishment. So that's our main thing. The home rule petition will put a little bit more meat behind it. I know that you were behind it. I know the community was behind it. It passed with a resounding vote of 210 to 2 at our February special town meeting this past year. And now we are working with the state level, especially with Representative Jay Barrows, to try to get this passed at that level so it will really have some authority to it. We have been working a lot with the town side, the town manager and the assistant town manager, on making some of the town employees' expectations clearer through an employee handbook, through how we track mutually our query processing. In public schools, we also do fingerprinting, but that isn't a requirement on the town side. But to make sure that all of those people are also trained, that anyone who works for the town can be trained, because you never know who's going to come in contact with children or be somewhere in the community. So we've received a lot of support from town departments, and we want to thank all of the town departments for that. We've noted some specifically in there. We have a new library director. Under his guidance, we've ensured that all library employees are now trained, and that's been major, because that's a big hangout for children and sadly predators as well. We've now been working with our religious organizations in town. Reverend Bill Dudley tackles that part of it. He leads that, so through his initiatives, and I work with private schools in the area. So we each have our duties to that. So I think that going forward, I think it's safe to say, I think that's our biggest challenge, is to remain visible and keep the momentum going to expand it. Youth sports, Jeff Downs is not here tonight, but he is responsible for organizing all of the youth sports training that's been going on. I think we've been running it 3 or 4 times a year. We've had great response from that. I'm now starting outreach to parents if they want to join in on those trainings, and they have been. So that's been wonderful. And we're also reaching out to volunteer groups and private child care facilities in town. So we want to continue doing all of that, and then edging forward a little bit more with providing guidance to organizations as to how they can do this work to protect our children to the maximum extent. So we appreciate your support. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think we pretty much did it all.
Yep.
But it just makes it so that, right now, we figure if we've done 1,200, there's, almost 2,500 eyes on our kids at all times. So that's the main goal, is to just get everybody involved. And we are working with the Y on a refresher course, because some people have taken it a couple years ago. And we want to give them something fresh to do. It's about a 25-minute video with questions for them to answer, so that will just refresh everything. It's different modules that we can offer to people, so we look forward to that too.
That 1,200, does that include all of the town employees, teachers,
Town,
and
schools,
volunteers,
youth
like coaches?
volunteers.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
In regard to the home rule petition, is there anything we can do to help push it along as a board?
I actually, I spoke with the representative this afternoon about this particular issue, because I thought maybe it would come up tonight. And one of the things he suggested to me, and he said he'd be happy to work with us on doing this, is writing a letter to the chairman of the third reading.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
we're doing that.
Bob's working
Yeah,
on
so,
that.
because he said that really could be held, because even he's surprised as to why it's been held up, because he was under the impression that it was gonna be going forward, and it hasn't been. So it's being held held up in that area. He's staying on it, very, very much so, but the question is that, he's just not getting the response. So he apparently has a meeting with the chairman on Thursday of this week,
Right.
but I think a letter to the chairman would
Yep.
be helpful.
He'll
for the
have it,
committee.
he'll have it the letter.
That'd be great.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
And if I can just add quickly on that, I spoke to Jay also, and he is frustrated. It's a two-step process, so Bob is gonna write the letter, give it to Jay, email's fine, and then he'll read it Thursday.
Yeah.
And I suggested to Bob that I would write one on behalf of the selectmen, and wanted to see if that's okay with you guys.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Because even though it went through the first and the second reading, it's jammed up in the third reading. And it's a little frustrating because between the second and third reading, the chairman specifically had comments, and I went to your meeting, and you guys,
We
it
changed.
seemed like it was a
Yep.
small thing, it was a big thing to you guys, but you conceded, made that change.
Right.
And I think the change was, we had originally all town employees. They were uncomfortable about that, so we changed it to all town employees that are in contact with
Right.
children. And it was a big deal for you guys. We made the concession. We were pretty much given word that it was gonna be handled by Thanksgiving, and it wasn't. Jay feels that the chairman is not responsive, so between that and a selectman letter, but then the next step is, once it gets out of the House, it's gotta go back to the Senate. And then that's where Senator Timmelty will come in. So it's a lot longer process than we anticipated, so.
We really do believe that if we continue to push this, that we as a community can be the leaders in the state, that if we can get it passed for ourselves, that it is common sense when you really get into it. So I think that we do believe that if we can continue to move on this, that it really will impact everyone across the Commonwealth,
Yeah.
all communities, that eventually that the legislature will get on board with it. Because there are some gaps in the current statute around who is a mandated reporter and who must undergo training. And there are a lot of people who are in contact with children who are not included in the current law. So when you really get down to the meat of it, it will make a lot of sense to people. We've just got to keep the momentum going. And it is hard to change state law. I think we all would agree with that. But we really do think that if we keep going, we can be the leaders in Massachusetts.
And then just one final, the work, this is 3 years now, the work that you guys have been doing on a shoestring $2,500 budget. And you pretty much have been meeting monthly, if not more, to the point where you're bringing your granddaughter into meetings so you don't miss it, little baby.
I did.
And we had turned over, Nancy's new, right into town, wanted to jump into it. So, I mean, it's a good, for a small committee, the social media, the outreach, the hands-on personal training to so many people on $2,500 a year is just phenomenal. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks.
that.
Well
Other
done.
than keep going, I think
Thank you.
that's,
All went and upward, right?
Yep.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank you all.
much.
Thank you for the update.
Great job.
Just a quick question that came up, if I draft a letter tonight and send it by email, you guys can look at it, and then we can email it over? Just, if we discuss it, then it's not an open meeting.
You can send your comments to me and I'll
Yeah.
handle it.
But then, can we sign it, each selectman sign it? I think it'd be more impressive to have five.
Five signatures on it, yeah. Okay, so,
If you could all sign it, I mean,
yeah,
that's,
so if we can get that wrapped up tomorrow and get it to Jay for Thursday
yeah, we'll finish
morning.
it. We can get it.
If you can get it-
We can get it all finalized tomorrow.
And
Send it to me and I'll
get it
finalize it.
ready for signature.
Yeah.
The town hall, we can come up and
I
sign
need
it.
to sign it either tomorrow or first
If
thing
you,
Thursday
if you send it,
morning.
if you send the letter to me, then I'll send it around to all the board members.
Okay,
And then you can all comment back to me.
Okay.
That way
Gotcha.
that's in compliance with the law.
okay.
And then, I think you probably should formally accept this report, as an action. That's my advice to you.
Do it now or do it during the action?
No.
Do it now. Move to accept the report of
Second.
the Child Sexual Abuse and Awareness Committee.
Second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Great, thank you.
We'll off to 7:20. Toby Keith, I Love This Bar and Grill.
Good evening. I'm Barry Burks from CRGD Foxborough.
I'm Scott Bowen from Toby Keys.
And we're here for,
Change of manager?
Are you the current manager, sir?
I am.
You want to just explain to the board why the change is needed?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I moved to Arizona. So, so I can't fulfill my duties of being in the property as many hours a week
You're going to
as.
fly back and forth?
Yeah, it's a heck of a commute,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's-
So,
And you're gonna be the new
yep.
manager?
Yeah, he's the current general manager of the business, so.
Oh, okay.
He's a little bit more local than I am, so.
in your application, it says the number of hours a week that you're gonna be on the premises is 60?
Yeah,
Are you-
at minimum.
Is that what you're currently working on the
Oh, yeah.
premises? You're keeping up with Fox Cares, right?
Yes, I am. Missed the last meeting because I had shoulder surgery, but other than that,
That's no excuse.
sorry.
I know they have a meeting coming up, so
Yep.
we'll see you there.
So you've been with Toby Keith 5 years, it looks like?
Yeah, Scott has actually been with us since the day we opened.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question? So what is the status of Toby Keith as a company right now? What is going on with it?
Right now, it's solely Foxborough.
Solely Foxborough.
Solely Foxborough. You know, there were some gross mismanagement and frankly, you know, grand theft going on at the corporate level. And it caused them to start to fall like dominoes, but part of the reason why I moved to Arizona was to kind of stem the bleeding and to protect Foxborough. And we spent the past year stabilizing the business with, you know, back taxes, with everything else. And it's not out of the woods yet, but we're basically, we're stronger than ever. Sales are looking great. You know, I think most of the rumors have gone away. You know, my aunt, who's 65 years old, lives in Foxborough, and you know, when she's calling me, asking me about it, I knew word was getting around. So, but our key thing was to shield Foxborough. Foxborough was our best property of the 17, and you know, we managed to do that, thankfully. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Are there any existing, during the duration, violations that are going on right now with Toby Keith's?
We had an ABCC violation
It was like a year or so ago.
a year
right?
ago or so in the summertime, yes. You know, we went to the hearings, it was taken care, we paid a fine and we were all set. We're in constant communication with the ABCC. Actually, they came in Friday night. We're setting up classes with our staff with the ABCC to go over policy and make sure that we're adhering. Obviously, it's a very large place, you know, right, you know, next to the stadium, so things tend to get, you know, the volume tends to be very high, which makes it sometimes a little bit more difficult to, you know, watch people as closely as they should be watched. But we have gone to great lengths to work with the ABCC, and we look forward to working with the new chief to get everything, you know, up to snuff where everybody feels comfortable with us as an operation.
Is it still currently staffed or at the door a Foxborough police officer?
Unfortunately, no. What had happened is Patriot Place decided as a whole, because I believe we were the only ones that had police details down there, and we welcomed them. We wanted them from the get-go. You know, in my background, I always like having police details. You know, tends to keep a calmer room. Patriot Place decided to do an area details.
Community policing.
We're community policing, yes. Where now, unfortunately, we don't have police at our door or in our building, and they tend to be, honestly, more situated down towards Bar Louie and Splitsville. They come up, they pop by, but they don't, you know, they're not stationed there, which frankly, you know, as the biggest place down there with live entertainment, I felt that we should have had more representation with the community policing. You know, ideally, I'd like to see that. But, you know, right now, no, you know, if we call, they come. But unfortunately, a lot of times when you're dealing situations, by the time you call them, whatever's happened, whatever's happened has happened, or it's escalated, unfortunately. So, that's where we're at right now.
You still have the ability to, you keep saying words like unfortunately and
Right.
and what have you, so then the more you talk, the more we understand it. But you still have the ability to hire a police detail on your own, right?
I guess we do, but we're paying for the community policing as well. When we do events, like when we have national acts, we do hire details of our own.
Yep.
When there's big events in the, you know, in the building. You know, but, I guess we could. You know, I don't, you know, I'd have to I'd have to chat with Patriot Place and see what, you know, what their thoughts are, because they were, you know, obviously very much, you know, trying to push the community policing.
Don't we have a bylaw where if it's live entertainment, there's more than so many people, there has to be a police detail on presence?
Well, that was part of our liquor license agreement initially when we opened.
I thought it was a town-wide, not just
Right.
Well,
up
if you have
there.
a certain number of people.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's,
An event.
but I think this was part of the agreement that was done, was that it would be a community policing program
No, but I'm talking town-wide.
on
Yeah, there
townwide.
is. Yeah.
So why wouldn't it apply to,
I think it did apply, but what happened was they looked at Patriots Place as an
As a-
entity
as a
versus an
entertainment-
individual.
Entertainment area.
Just
They
to
used to-
cover more
Cover.
properties.
Something we can talk, I know the police chief is working closely with their management team right now to identify improvements. And I'll discuss with them to see, you know, what kind of responses we're getting from that location. And I'm sure we can look at some of the new ways to address it.
Every so often in the police blotter, there'll be a notation that there was someone from Toby Keith's that was taken into protective custody. Okay? What's the difference between protective custody and over-serving, and why wouldn't that be a violation?
Well, protective custody could be any number of things. That you know, it might not be necessarily, you know, over serving. It could be, you know, somebody being agitated for whatever reason. You know, it is something that obviously we try to keep a very close eye on. That's basically the gist of our communications with ABCCs, to try to improve. You know, once people leave there, make sure that, you know, we're not over-serving and that we're not releasing people into the town who, you know, are over-intoxicated. It's obviously, you know, our liquor license is very important. Unfortunately, I don't think Toby Keith's Juice Bar would go, would go over too well. But it is something that we're taking very quite seriously. I think in the past there was, you know, I don't think the focus was that as much, but we intend to be around for quite a while, and we don't want, you know, we want to make sure that we run a good operation.
But you don't have the police detail there all the time, but do you have someone at the front door
We have
checking IDs?
security,
and
absolutely. We have
Is that all the time, or just at peak hours?
After a certain time every night, there is security on, but on the weekends, they come in earlier and they're at the door. We do have an ID scanner. All of our servers, bartenders, and security are all trained in alcohol awareness, all trained in crowd management. So we go to great lengths there. It's just that, we always feel we can be better. And obviously, we want to be compliant. You know, we realize that we're, you know, a large place next to a major stadium, and you know, there are pros and cons to that. And we're just making sure that we, you know, not just overserve it, but also we don't inherit problems, whether it be from the stadium or the parking lots or another facility, which, you know, can be quite difficult a lot of times, you know, with the concerts and the games, you know, so it is something that we try to be very diligent on.
So are you still going to be associated with Toby Keith, but in Arizona?
Absolutely.
Is
yes.
that their headquarters?
Yep, that's,
Okay.
that, well, what's left of it, yep. Yeah, I'm based out of there, yeah, the owner lives there. You know, so, yeah, I'm back and forth quite a bit. I'm actually building a property in downtown Boston right now, so, you know, I was on site yesterday for the game, for the game, you know, big events I generally come in town for, and then other times I, you know, sneak attack, I pop in, you know, just make sure they're doing the right thing. You know, I'm still pretty much the primary contact with the office, with Marcia and all, so, you know, so I'm not stepping away at all. It's just that, you know, to be compliant with the,
Changing roles.
yeah, be compliant with the rules of a licensed manager, you know, we need to switch over.
Yeah, so you'll be doing the day-to-day operations.
Which
Okay.
you have been.
Yeah.
Have been
Yeah.
doing. Okay. Any further questions? Motion?
Move to accept the application for change of manager of Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill.
Second?
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay. Well, after 7:30, we'll take 7:25, Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, Finance Director, budget discussion.
Are you operational?
Pardon?
Are you operational? Or
I think so.
you either pull that up or you wanna?
I've been given
Oh,
a
you got
special
a
device
clicker.
here. I
All
can
right,
actually
so
go
you're-
like
you're
this, so
actually good now.
I'm gonna test it out.
All right, so just by way of introduction of this item tonight, the board has indicated that it wanted to have a further discussion about the taxation strategy for the budget process for FY18, or in FY17 currently. And the FY18 process is actually starting now. We've actually, I think the submission of budgets has ended this week. So we're submitting, we'll start the first stage of that review process, and then we'll move on to the next phases, which then means it'll be then reviewed by the advisory committee, and then ultimately come up with a final recommendation for town meeting. So at this juncture, it's an opportunity for us to sort of explain, everything to the community and to the board, particularly in the board in this case, so you can react to what we've been doing and what the kind of approach that we've been taking to address the budget, and so we can actually have a more of a dialogue and understanding of that. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to Randy Scollins. We can go forward with his presentation.
Great, thank you, Bill. So yes, it is a budget discussion, but I know there was a particular focus that the board had on the tax levy itself, and so that's the intent of this information, is to focus us in on that and have a discussion on that. So I did prepare this presentation. I'm hoping everybody received it yesterday, so if it pleases the chair, I was going to go through this. So I was going to start with the tax levy itself, because although those of us been working with it for some time, it's secondhand. The mechanics of it can be confusing to some, especially when you're talking about things like not taxing to the levy limit. So I just thought it would be a good primer just to briefly go over the levy and how it's calculated. So the property tax levy is revenue a town can raise through real and personal property taxes. That's the levy. Proposition 2.5, which is in effect in Massachusetts since 1982, places constraints on the levy raised and on how much the levy can be increased from year to year. Levy limit is a restriction on property taxes that the town can levy, and Prop 2.5 established two types of limits. First off, a town cannot levy more than 2.5% of the total full and fair cash value of all taxable and real and personal property in the town. That's called the levy ceiling. And in our case here, if you go down to the first bar, here you see this number, $72,604,000. So for this fiscal year, that is the town's levy ceiling. We're obviously well below that. The levy ceiling is, again, 2.5% of total taxable property value. So in Foxborough's case, total taxable property value is about $2.9 billion. So 2.5% of that is 72,604,000. Surprisingly, there are a few communities that are actually bumping up against that. We don't have that issue. So that's one constraint. The second constraint is the levy limit itself and how much you can increase the levy from year to year. So Prop 2.5 does provide communities with some flexibility, though. It's possible to levy above the levy limit on a temporary basis, so that would be like a debt exclusion, or on a permanent basis, and that would be something like a general override. So in FY17, I just wanted to easily explain here the levy limit that we have for the year that we're in right now. So it's calculated with three primary pieces. The first piece being the levy limit from the prior fiscal year, in fiscal 2016. So that was $40,615,000. And then we're allowed to increase the levy by 2.5% by Prop 2.5, and that added $1,015,000. And then, in addition to that, for all new growth, meaning new property that is now newly taxable, you can add that to the levy, for the first time, and then it becomes a permanent part of the levy. So those three things combined this year totaled $42,582,000. And then we also have, as you know, debt exclusions for a variety of public buildings that we have: the town hall, the public. I'm sorry, not the town hall. Public safety building, the Foxborough, the high school, the library. And the debt service cost for this year for those buildings is $2,584,000. So that added to it gets us to the actual levy that we levied this year was $45,167,000. And then if you just flip ahead to next year, the FY17 levy limit against is the base, that $42,582,000. That's the base for next year. The 2.5% increase to the levy that's allowed would be $1,064,000. And then we're currently estimating new growth at this point in time at $631,000. That's an exercise of the building commissioner, the chief assessor, and myself go through. And then, so therefore, the levy limit is currently estimated at $44,278,806 for next year. And then our debt service is already scheduled, so we know what that number is. It's $2,470,000 for next year, getting us to an estimated levy of $46,748,000 for next year. The levy ceiling will likely move up a little bit next year, again, because it's 2.5% of your property value. So with new growth, we're expecting new value, and property value seems to be on the rise. So any questions just on the basic concept of the levy itself? Great. Let's see if this is going to work. All right. So now I wanted to explain at a more generic level what not taxing to the levy limit, would look like conceptually, because I know there's can be some confusion about, what you lose, how long you lose it for, et cetera. So I just wanted to be clear, what the mechanics of not taxing to the levy limit is. So in the first chart here, if we didn't tax to the levy limit in fiscal 18, meaning that we didn't tax that 2.5% and taxed just below that, would be at that, the first line, the FY18 levy. The levy limit wouldn't change. The levy limit would still be the full amount, including the 2.5%. That would still be the levy limit. The levy ceiling also wouldn't change, but the levy would be less. What we actually levied would be less than the limit. Obviously, I'm not taking into account things that are complicated, like debt exclusions and things like that. I just want to focus right in on that, on the 2.5%. So then if you flip to fiscal 19, again, assuming in fiscal 18 we didn't tax to the levy limit, so that 2.5% wasn't raised, wasn't taxed. So in FY18, you start with, in fiscal 19, you start with the fiscal 18 old levy limit, which is still the higher number, the amount that includes the 2.5% that wasn't taxed in the previous year. So that's still the starting point for the old levy limit, and then again, 2.5% is allowed to be added on to that in fiscal 19 as well. So the new levy limit, again, is indeed 2.5% higher than the prior year's levy limit, which includes the 2.5%. So if the $1,064,000 wasn't raised in fiscal 18, and in fiscal 19, and that was considered a one-time thing, and in fiscal 19, the board wanted to recapture it, and we needed to go to the levy limit, there would be 2.5% increases, in that particular year to snap back to where you were. The impact of the savings of not taxing to the levy limit, that 2.5%. It's worth $146 per year on average for average, residential property taxpayer. And then half of that, if you went up 1.25% as opposed to 2.5%, value is $73 per year. And again, that's if you're an itemizer and you get itemize your real estate taxes, that would be reduced slightly by your tax savings. And just to understand who's doing this, like who's not taxing to the levy limit. So this was a little bit of an exercise, but it is something you can put together looking at the state's website. I found there are 43 cities and towns that do not tax to the levy limit, or 12.25% of the state. And in fiscal 16, they didn't. And the average excess levy capacity that they had, that they didn't use, was $5 million each, across the 43 cities, excluding Cambridge, because Cambridge had an excess levy capacity of $155 million, which they didn't utilize. And primarily, this group of 43 are large communities. Your Pembrokes and your Billrickas and your Woburns and places like that. They're large communities that have very large tax bases, particularly commercial tax bases, and so their property value that they're taxing, in many cases, is a multiple of what say the town of Foxborough has. So they've sort of gotten up to this level of economies of scale where there definitely is some excess. Although I did find that out of the 43, there are actually 4 communities that at one point or another did pass a general override, and they still have it, but for last year they were still below the levy limit. So that's we'll move on. Any conceptual questions about what would happen if we didn't tax to the levy limit and then brought it back?
So obviously, the impact would be greater on commercial businesses. If you, the
savings.
The savings, yes.
Yes, because this $146 per year average for average residential property is for approximately 6,200 properties, and that's 75% roughly of the tax that's raised. But you have approximately 400 businesses or tax accounts that make up the 25% of that 2.5%. So it'd be larger numbers. I mean, they pay larger numbers anyway, so it would be larger gain for for businesses. Okay. So the next thing I thought was important for everybody to understand was the primary sources of revenue that drive the general fund budgets, and to look at a 10-year history. So we have 4 primary sources of revenue, as most of you know. We have tax, we have state aid, we have local receipts, and we have other sources. So the general fund budgeted revenues have grown in total by 4.5% on average over the last 10 years. So going from $43.4 million to $64.8 million, or $21.3 million over 10 years. That's the power of the large numbers. Even a 4.5% increase on $43.4 million over 10 years is going to get you up to $64.8 million. And how each of these components grew: taxes grew the most by 5.1% on average over the 10 years, or $15.8 million. Net state aid was virtually flat at about $236,000 in total gain over the 10 years. Local receipts were up on a percentage basis substantially on average, 7.4%, but $4.4 million in total. And other sources were up 4%, or $924,000 over the 10 years, with other sources growth, half of it coming from ambulance receipts, which we've come to rely more on. Couple of takeaways that I have from this. One is it can be a little misleading to look at the tax line and see that the taxes grew by 5.1%. But the reality is that 57% of the actual tax dollars that grew from 2008 to 2017 all came from new growth. So once it's new growth, it then becomes part of the base, and then that grows 2.5%. which, if you think about it, it makes sense. If you're constrained by Prop 2.5, the base tax can only go up 2.5%. And then when you're adding in substantial new growth, that is comprising the bulk of the increase in the taxes. And the other takeaway from this is, with state aid not growing, there's definitely a greater reliance on taxes and local receipts. And to point that out, if you look in the FY08 column and you see I have the percentage that the tax is of the total revenues in that year, it's 65%. And then if you go across to 2017, it's 68%. So now we're relying 3% more of our total general fund revenue picture on taxation, whereas state aid has gone from 19%, what was our second largest revenue source, down to 13%. So down 6%. It's now dropped to the third largest revenue source for the general fund. Local receipts has also increased from 11% to 14%. Other sources has stayed steady at 5%. So what you see there is state aid is, in essence, declining as part of the town's revenue source, and so therefore that 6% has moved 3% to tax and 3% to local receipts. If that were not the case, if state aid were to grow at a rate at least close to some of these other growth rates of these other revenue sources, we might be having a different conversation today. But that, unfortunately, that's not the case, and it doesn't look like that's going to change based on everything that I understand about state aid. And I have to say, with all due respect to our charter school folks in the town, that $1.5 million that we pay to the charter school would be $1.5 million more that would show up on that state aid line in fiscal 17. So that's a real hit to the town's budget.
And by the way, if in fact those individuals were absorbed back into our school system, we wouldn't see the same impact in terms of cost.
Absolutely not, because we get charged on a total all-in average, and it's 112 students. But to add a student into the school system, you're not paying any more for your buildings or for all of the overhead or the maintenance or the electricity. You're paying maybe a couple $100 for variable expenses. So and I think the superintendent and the school business manager here, they can correct me if they think differently, but my understanding is that those 112 could be absorbed back into the school system, with minimal cost. Certainly not the $1.5 million that we're paying out.
I think the net state aid impact is a very significant consideration here. I recall the discussion that occurred a few weeks ago when a member of the audience indicated, well, we're in the middle of the pack when it comes to our tax rate, but we should probably be better than that if in fact we have all this other additional revenue. What this actually shows, and what that was showed to me when actually I saw this slide for the first time, is that's the reason why. Is because we're absorbing that state aid hit that we're not getting by virtue of the fact we're losing to the charter school, as well as we're not getting the fair share of state aid because of our community.
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say it's a cut, because the reality is that the majority of the expenses in a town budget grows to some degree, whether it's inflation or not. And with what was the second largest revenue source to the town not growing, that in essence is a cut. You want your recurring revenues to keep pace with the natural increase in expenses that you would expect. And then to turn this around to look at the actual spending, the general fund budget growth history. So I've broken it down to our three primary components. We've got municipal, which means non-school, school, and our fixed costs, which is our insurances, health, and debt service. So general fund budgets have grown in total by 4.5% on average over the last 10 years, obviously, because we need balanced budgets. Fixed costs have led that, growing by 5.8% on average, or $6.4 million. Municipal costs by 4.8%, or $5.4 million in total, and school by 3.9%, at $9.5 million. And $9.5 million seems like a large number, but they're half the budget, so it's actually in line with what you might expect with expenses to grow. I have to say that if it wasn't for all of the significant health plan redesign efforts that have gone on, which I know the board has participated historically in making some decisions there, and the effort of the loss control committee. If it wasn't for those efforts, then our fixed cost numbers would be pretty significantly higher than they are today. So that's the growth history. And then I think it's just always important to understand how the finances in the town are approached, how the budgets are approached. And so as we all know, there are no general overrides in the town. Hopefully there never will be. It's always good to look at your neighbors and again see what they're doing. 10 of Foxborough's 15 surrounding towns have general overrides, averaging 4.4 million. 3 of the 5 without the overrides of our surrounding towns actually did go for them, but they were denied. And then looking at the state, this one, I had never pulled this statistic out before, but I found this one personally interesting. 259 out of the 351 communities in the state, or 74% of Massachusetts towns, have general overrides, averaging 2.9 million. So, we're in the minority, and hopefully we continue to stay in the minority by not having them. But that is the norm across the state. And then there's another aspect that I've always recognized as something that sort of paints Foxborough's financial circumstance, which gives it a little bit of a challenge, and that is we have, compared to the 15 surrounding towns that we're in the middle of, 11.6% less taxable property than these average 15 towns. And if at our current tax rates, that would equate to about 5.7 million. Now, I know the first thing that anybody would say is, well, we have the stadium. And right, they don't pay taxes, they pay payment in lieu of taxes. So that's a fair point. So the average from the stadium has been 2.6 million over the last 5 years. So take that off, and you're still down to a number about $3 million on average compared to our towns, that because of the lack of property to tax compared to our neighbors, that makes it a little bit more challenging to bring revenue to bear to provide services. I think everybody on this board knows about our adopted financial policies, but there's a couple of points that I did want to make here. One is contingent liability funding. So that's our OPEB, or retiree health benefits. So thankfully, we're on this path of funding at the ARC, meaning the annual required contribution, with full funding by 2038. And then same thing with the pension, funding at the ARC with full funding by 2031. So I'm imagining what this table, hopefully in the town hall, looks like 20 years from now, and what those officials will be dealing with, all things being equal, is millions of dollars in less of an expense going out to these items. So that is the future that today's town officials are creating for the future town officials, is that these liabilities, again, all things being equal, will be funded in the 2030s. So it's a good thing. I don't know that many communities or states are going to be able to say the same thing.
I just want to interject, because that's a really important point, because in the previous community I went to, there was the Board of Selectmen took the position, as this board has taken, whether consciously or unconsciously, the position you've taken effectively is, so we're not going to kick the can down the road. So in other words, you've got some major liability issues that major cities in this state, and the state itself, have not addressed. Which means that the next generations of children will be paying those debts, because there was no attempt to try and address those in today's dollars. By reducing those costs and being on a schedule to pay the ARC for the OPEB liability is huge. That's the reason why you have a AAA bond rating today, no question about it. The pension funding is aggressive as well, but it actually will take care of itself. And then, as Randy correctly points out, that frees up millions of dollars that will no longer have to be paid into that fund. It will be excess money that will be available to pay for ongoing operations.
Or give back to the taxpayer.
Or give back to the taxpayer.
All things being equal.
Absolutely true, and I don't mean to show that as a least consideration. The other thing that we talk about a lot is developing a reserve fund that helps pay for our ongoing operational building costs. So in other words, we also know that we should be replacing buildings on every 25 to 30 years. That's just a normal, or doing major operational improvements to those buildings every 25 to 30 years, because the buildings themselves just wear out. I mean, that's the reality of it. And most houses, they replace their roofs, they do major improvements to their homes, the heating systems, et cetera, during the course of that period of time. So we should be setting up funds that actually, that address that. And that truly addresses all of your operational costs as a town, as a government, on a regular, ongoing basis.
Your major expenses.
Your major expenses.
Absolutely. So I actually got to skip down to that one since Bill just mentioned it. So we do have stabilization funds. We have our core. It's not a rainy day. That sounds like it's for something that's not. It's really a disaster fund, which we maintain at 5% of the operating budget, because that's what the rating agencies are looking for to see that we could maintain our debt service if something really bad should happen. And then what Bill was just talking about, we do have a capital stabilization account. Again, we fund it when we're able. We funded it once. It's now grown to over $550,000. But assuming that the borough school goes forward and the voters accept that, and that becomes a debt excluded project, my recommendation to the board is going to be that you take that and you use that towards the cost of the project to defray the amount that you have to borrow, because it would be excluded debt, and therefore it would be a direct taxpayer savings. You wouldn't pay the interest on it, and they wouldn't have to pay that back. But after doing that, then we're dry again, in that account. And to Bill's point, that's an area of need where it's always good to have some money to, do the things that you need to do now to these buildings before they become a real problem. Just going back up, borrowing, we're at a responsible and prudent mix of excluded and included AAA rated debt, keeps our tax burden to a minimum. We do have other types of reserves. We have operating reserve, but it's really a budgetary reserve, which is very small, $75,000 annually. And it's small because we do have tight spending controls in place, and so there's really a minimal need for it. And then the free cash, which is what we generate, local receipts are budgeted conservatively every year to generate the necessary free cash to build this operating reserve and to fund the following year's operating and capital budget. So by not spending every drop of revenue that the town is going to get and underspending it dramatically by about $1.5 million every year, what that does is that gives the town a nice cushion for when the downturns in the economy come, which we've seen too in the last 12 years, 2004 and 2009. 2004 we had no reserves and there were substantial cuts. 2009 we had reserves and we were able to maintain services by utilizing that cushion that we had. And again, not under budgeting that revenue source would create a significant budgetary challenge the following year and take away that financial flexibility. The last piece on how we operate financially here is we definitely do have a rigorous and cooperative annual budget process. The long range plan is updated and reviewed annually to create context so we know where we're going. Within the current year's budget, how does that fit within our long-term financial plan? We do have detailed school, town administration, and advisory committee reviews of every budget, and the school and town officials work in excellent partnership on joint priorities, which certainly makes it a pleasure, because I know that's not the case everywhere else. These are some things that I think we know pieces of them, but when you put them all together, I think it starts to paint a picture of the value that's being added, within the resources that we have to try to minimize the taxpayer burden. So the town hall debt was funded with included debt, meaning within the budgeted resources. So that was $500,000 in this year's debt service that was absorbed in the budget. So rather than asking the taxpayers, and that was based on the plan that was presented to the community that we can do that, assuming all things remain the same. That's a $1,200 savings over the life of the project to the average taxpayer, or $60 per year, and debt service that they're not paying is being absorbed. The Mill Street property, the senior center were funded with included debt like that. And the DPW administration building was done without borrowing, with reserves. So when we can do it within the resources, that's a goal. Free kindergarten is the school's goal for next year. But again, that's pending continued financial support of the multi-year financial plan, and that equates to a $3,000 savings per student that a parent would send to the kindergarten. So that's a real dividend that the town is hopefully going to be able to provide to young families. We provided $800,000 in low-interest private sewer system loans that if people replace their septic systems. We've shifted health insurance costs from the town to employees and retirees. That's saving annually hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. The Loss Control Committee continues to drive down our general liability risk, resulting in reduced general insurance and workers' comp premium costs. That saves us tens of thousands in our premiums every year. This year was about $54,000. And the split tax rate, maintaining a consistent share of the tax burden between residential and business. The savings to the residential taxpayer this year, as opposed to going to a single rate, was $203. So real value to the residential taxpayer. I characterize these next items as smaller government because we're trying to bring things together as opposed to doing things separately. So we've centralized the IT, or Information Technology Department, in 2009. We centralized the data center, so it's on a fully redundant town-owned fiber network. We did that last year. Thank you, Aaron Heyer. Consolidated the DPW department, Highway, Tree and Park, Water and Sewer in 2011. Outsourced and privatized solid waste collection and disposal in 2013. Established the Regional Sewer Partnership, Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton, and Easton in 2014, adding 380,000 gallons of sewer capacity to the 450,000 that we do have, getting us to 830. And not doing that, the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners realized that would have been very expensive for the existing sewer customers if we had not made a move like that. We centralized facilities maintenance department with a great partnership again with the schools in 2015. And currently we're assessing a regional dispatch partnership again between Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton, and Easton. And I would say that we've got a smarter, more progressive government here in Foxborough as well. You've got a seasoned management team. The average career years are 33 years across the Foxborough's top 13 managers. You have a permanent municipal building committee, volunteers. They deliver incredible value with every project that they do, every building. The DPW director has delivered the town's first pavement management system. So now the millions that get invested in roads, it's on a programmatic basis. He's addressing the neediest areas. We have a new human resources department, which is finally centralizing policies and processes that can be quite an administrative burden across the town. That's also reactivated the personnel board. Part-time electrical plumbing inspectors, a small thing. Change from fee-based to wage-based, and that's going to reduce our costs, overall costs this year. We have a comprehensive 3-year update to the master plan done in 2015. We achieved the top credit rating this year, saving $1 million in just this year alone. Solar field revenue stream projects coming soon. And sort of one of the keys here is we maintain sustainable employee compensation plans which prudently manages 60% of the town's overall budget within the revenue stream, meaning percentages stay within percentages that our revenues are.
I think you just forgot the reactivated the newly constituted Economic Development Committee.
I'm sorry, and the Economic Development Committee has been newly reactivated and constituted, which I know has been engaged in some key policy decisions. And despite everything that the town employees, officials are doing, you have a community that's personally invested in throwing their hat into the ring and putting their money behind it. These are some really neat initiatives, and I see some of the board members here all over these. But you've got the Newtown Common flagpole, again private, restored Silent Sentinel, Sam Burns Memorial Community Field, the 9/11 War Memorial at Public Safety, and the Lame Homestead and Interpretive Center. That's what I've been led to believe that it's going to be. So incredible that the community definitely feels like they want to continue to invest on their own to make Foxborough a better place. And then despite all of that, there are indeed service needs that are unmet and imposed. And these are things that get wrestled with every year. Can we afford them? Can we not afford them? On the property side, it's walkable sidewalks. That takes a lot of money. Right now, the money is being funneled into roads, but that would take a substantial investment to really work on that, and that's under the header of complete safe streets under the master plan. Increased funding of road maintenance itself, increased stewardship of all the conservation land the town has been accumulating, Cemetery repair and preservation program, that's something that's been brought up by our town historian. It's something that's in need. It's becoming clear, well, the fire chief's been aware of this for some time, because he brings it up every year, is that there may be the day where we may seriously be considering a fire substation on the east side of Foxborough to improve response times. Completing the high school turf field complex at the high school campus, the track and the stands, not an inexpensive item. We still have some abandoned buildings representing a liability. I know that town manager's been working hard, getting rid of some of the ones that we have, but there's still more to go. And if we build reserves, we will ultimately reduce the cost of future borrowing, so like we've done with the, hopefully we'll do with the Borough School. On the operations side, is a lot of these unfunded mandates that are starting to come down. Stormwater management, this MS4 regulation, you've got to clean out your what are they called?
Catch basins?
The catch basins, like twice a year, as well as some other things. Dam rebuilding we're required to do. Civil service work's been remanded back to the town due to reduced day support, because they've got a department of one now at the state. There's FSLA overtime rules, which now may drive some incremental cost. Minimum wage is definitely driving some incremental cost now, those changes. Another change again in January. We have a public safety communications network that is pretty dated. That's the point-to-point across the town. That's an expensive proposition, but it's something that the prior police chief and the new police chief has already highlighted as something that they'd like to see addressed. We don't have a geographic information system to speak of. That's to do it right. That's an expensive proposition.
That's $1 million plus proposition.
Increased investment in technology. I think I'm thrilled to see you guys working with the board docs there. That's great. That's just one more example of
Didn't
One
quite
of us
work
is.
well.
They're all broken, Randy.
We're working on it.
but
Progress to be made on that.
you'll get there. But we need more of that. There's so many things that we do more efficiently with more technology, and it's not just the technology. There's a support staff that's needed, to support that. The water department wants to go to monthly water reading capability. That costs money to do that. Establish an economic development function, I've heard, as a desire here, given the phase that we're going through now, is to help usher that new phase of economic development into the town. We don't even have an emergency management budget. I can speak personally, I don't believe we have proper level of administrative support across most of the departments. Highway department, we continue to add acreage and accepted streets, but we're not adding to staff there. The police chief has identified some gaps in the training budget in the police department, which I know I'd like to address. Expanded sewer infrastructure. It's one thing to have the capacity, it's another thing to have the infrastructure to actually pump it. And town center parking, of course, that's a pipe dream to somehow improve that. So that's the backdrop of where we are, what how the tax levy works, how our revenues have been trending, how the expenses have been trending, value we've been adding, other things that haven't been met. So to this question of what's our tax strategy here for next year, what we've come up with is some options for the board to consider, and certainly you can come up with other options, but this is just to get you started. So on the budget management side, would be to evaluate our budgeted costs, to evaluate our current service levels, like what should the service levels be, like actually have a discussion, at department at the level, what are we shooting for in each of these departments, strategically address future service needs, some of which I had laid out, and we're thinking and we're recommending that maybe a formation of a Board of Selectmen budget subcommittee to engage in the various departmental reviews that we have, which we're just about to kick into high gear on, that might be helpful for some board members to see what each department is grappling with. There's also the capability of reassessing the tax split between residential and business, to reassess that, what's the best option. And also something that I know I'm committed to is investigating additional senior tax exemptions and options, and, working with the Board of Assessors, assuming the Board of Selectmen, is, once they see what the proposals are, we'd be looking to bring those forward at the May annual town meeting. Not going to summarize. I think you've absorbed hopefully what I said. And happy to
So,
for us
thank you, Randy.
engage in
I
discussion.
appreciate that, a lot of work that went into that, so I know a lot of time and effort went into that, so thank you. So members of the board, we've heard your concerns and your expressions of ways in which we can try and reduce costs to the taxpayers, and we're very concerned about that, just as you are. The challenge we face is the fact that, as you can see, we've done a lot of great things in the community. We still have a lot of unmet needs. And at the same time, we've never had a real solid discussion, I don't think, as a town, and I think it's something we really should plan on doing at some point, is having a service level discussion. Because it's easy to say, let's go out and cut, and we can do that. I mean, that's a mechanical function for us to do. We can actually go out there and trim budgets the best we can, and we do that anyways. I mean,
Every year.
we go through that process, and that's why we talked about having a budget subcommittee, because from the board, so you can see the kind of cuts that we go through every year when the budgets are submitted to us. We evaluate every single expense on a historical basis, as well as, what's the potential impacts. We also don't want to underfund a budget, because if we know an expense is going to occur during the next year, we don't want to be coming back to you asking for additional appropriations in some ways to fund those budgets, because they're going to be met throughout the rest of the year. So I think what we really, this is an opportunity for us to discuss the mechanics of the process, to ask you how you'd like us to proceed from here, because as we know, we're in the budget review process time right now. We would respectfully ask your assistance in how we can get that done properly, and come back with something that you would approve and you feel good about. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to provide a budget that we all can live with, and that's, we think strategically, we think logically, we think operationally, we think cooperatively, and we try to achieve all those goals at the same time. But the same token, there's only so many dollars that can go around, and so we're here to have the dialogue with you and to see how you like us to approach it. That's our presentation.
Okay, we'll open up to members of the board. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Couple of questions. So going back to what you said about shifting the tax rate, so we would have to readjust that in order to have any benefit to the resident, more benefit to the resident.
The split tax rate? Yes.
Okay.
You could, I know that the board discussed various options at the last classification hearing in November. I think we presented 4 different options, and I think I heard the board discussing 2, and you landed on 1. But yeah, you can revisit that each annually.
Annually, so we missed it.
Well, you kept maintaining the split, and
So we can't go back and relook at that decision from a month or so ago.
right, not for this fiscal year,
Right.
but for the next fiscal year.
Another week or so.
For the next fiscal year, so for the tax bills July through June, you'd make that decision in November, because people just get taxpayers get preliminary tax bills in the first two quarters, and then they get trued up with the actual based on the rate that gets set in the back half.
Okay. And when you're building budgets a year or two out, what are you using to forecast new growth? Like Bill Casbara and what's...
Yeah,
That's a good question, actually.
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's a key component of the revenue formula here.
You get a bigger chunk with new growth, right?
Right, and so it's tough to it's tough to gauge, but I'm very fortunate We have a building commissioner who's very plugged into what's going on
He's our
in the
crystal ball,
community,
so to
right?
speak.
And when it's gonna come online. And then, we have an expert chief assessor who is able to help us boil that down to how that would increase the tax, because, this obviously land exists there already, and so we go through sector by sector. We look at, what are all the residential developments that are going on? What are all the commercial developments? What's going on Route 1, what's going on in other parts of the town? What's going on with personal property. So we look at each segment, and then we go out, the 4 years in our plan. And I have to say, we've, that group, I can't take credit for it. That group has done the two of them have done a phenomenal job in being pretty accurate. I think the last 2 years, the only reason we missed it is because 2 projects finished a couple of weeks early, and we captured them, in 1 year as opposed to the next.
One of the other things you mentioned was on the savings, the health insurance. You mentioned hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
What's the real, I mean, hundreds of thousands could be any.
It was about,
multiple
I think
numbers.
it's about $350,000 a year, this last agreement that we put in place.
350,000?
Yeah, about 350,000,
A year.
give or take, annually.
Okay.
And that's, and I know that's something that,
We have to reopen that discussion again this year.
Yeah, we've started the process to look at it
Okay.
with all the union groups.
And just kind of going back over time and stuff that was told to citizens in the past, and you brought it up in one of your things, when we consolidated the DPW, it was sold as we're going to save tons of money. Did that happen? I mean, did we significantly save money?
I think you're saving in the common use of the equipment as opposed to redundant equipment. You're saving in the coordination of the infrastructure, the water infrastructure work that's being done, coordinating that with the roads. So you're saving, in that way. I can't speak to,
Roger's
other
here,
savings.
so-
Yeah, and I'm
Roger,
not,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not picking on DPW,
Oh, no,
but what I'm
but
saying
no,
is,
it's
good for everybody to
that
understand.
was
It's a
the
good question.
It's a good question.
That was the big thing, if we consolidate, we're gonna save, well, did we? And, you had also mentioned, if, we grow and this happens, then we can give the taxpayers money, but that's down the road, and we're talking, real time. I mean, so I just wanna, did we save substantial money like we were promised when the DPW
Did you say
consolidated?
Roger was here?
Yeah, Roger, you want to just try to address that? I think one thing that's even been a further improvement since the time that I've been here is that they moved into their own building, and they're all under one roof now.
Right.
Which, they were actually separated. They had some staff up here, up at Town Hall, some
Yeah.
staff down at DPW. Now they're all in one room. And so they all work with each other, and they were able to consolidate some of the administrative needs.
Yeah, I've been here 5 years now, and when I came on board, the town had never had a DPW, as you know. And the DPW was put together with an idea towards saving money, but also with an idea of improving services. And so we've tried to do as much on both sides of that as we can do. The services we provide have expanded dramatically in the 5 years. Example, we are now close to 200 acres of fields, parks, and other things that we have to maintain. We have not added personnel in the tree and park department. Highways, we've added to the number of miles of road in Foxborough in the time that I've been here, about 14 to 15 miles, not counting what's coming up in the annual town meeting for acceptances. That gets us money because it increases the Chapter 90 allotment from the state. Every time we accept a street, we file right away with Mass DOT to get the additional revenues that produces. So we've gone up quite a bit in revenues on Chapter 90 in the 5 years. I think we've gone up something on the order of about $170,000.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate, 170 to 200.
Yeah. We've done that, and we're down one employee and have been down one employee since the first year I was here in highway. the end of the first year I was here, I asked for 2 laborers in highway. I've never gotten any. So I'm operating highway on the same personnel level that I started with 5 years ago. The only place where we've seen any significant increase in personnel is we've added 2 employees in water and sewer. And I predict that in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to add more in water and sewer, because I think our sewer function is going to increase over time. I'm not going to tell you how fast it's going to increase, but because I don't have a crystal ball any better than yours, but I can tell you that that's going to increase. However, those are enterprise accounts, and the revenues generated by the enterprise accounts have gone up. So we're doing pretty well in free cash in water and sewer for the first time in a long time. Sewer's been pretty flat funded for a long time.
But you needed it for the infrastructure that you have to invest in.
Exactly. So if you ask me what have I saved, it's hard to put a number on something that combines so much other activity. And I'm not going to put a number on it. I think it'd be kind of a waste of time to try to do that. But ask yourself about the improvements in services and improvements in infrastructure that have been accomplished in that 5 years, and use that as your judge of where what we've done and how far we've gone. I mean, over 60% of the roads in Foxborough have been dramatically improved in 5 years. And we're rapidly coming to a point where we're going to be able to begin to spend money on sidewalks and other improvements that are associated with roadways. We're not there yet. We're close. We need another good 2 years, and we need the state to step up to the plate and fund Chapter 90 at the levels that the Mass Municipal Association has been pointing out are needed for the last at least 30 years. We need $300 million across the state right now. They're funding at $200 million, and they have for the last 3 years. Before that, they weren't even funding at $200 million. So that's what's happening. And it costs money to do this stuff. You guys know, you've seen us out there. We do all kinds of crazy things in addition to our regular work.
And I'm not questioning that at all, but what I'm questioning is 5 or 6 years ago, it was like, you got to do this. We are going to consolidate. We're going to save money, and nobody can tell us where we save the money.
I would tell you, if I was here 5, 6 years ago, I would tell you to do the same thing, because it's the most efficient way to operate a function like that, to have it all under one roof with one director. Because what happens, Chris, and if you broke it, the way you'd be able to measure it, if you had separate boards running different functions, like a highway supervisor's board, like a water sewer commission that has its own budget that just runs separate from everything else. You'd have a separate engineering department. You have all those things are under one roof right now, and so they're working all together under the same with the same level of efficiencies in that regard. So I can't tell you what the numbers were, because I wasn't here 5, 6 years ago, but I can tell you today that it's far more efficient than when it was 6 years ago.
Okay, that's all I got for now.
Roger, I have a question. And one of the things I'm concerned about is some of these unfunded mandates, particularly the MS4 regulation. Has DEP come out with final requirements yet for the stormwater?
Yeah.
Where do we stand with that?
MS4 is going to require us to do immediately some things and over time other things. The most immediate impact on us is going to be in fiscal year 18. We're going to have to clean the basins twice a year. And the material that you take out of the basins is considered to be hazmat, and it has to be properly disposed of, and we don't have a disposal area, so we're going to have to pay to dispose of it. In addition to that, we have to measure the depth of every catch basin in town from the casting to the base. And we have to measure the height of the outfall pipe, and we're not supposed to collect more than half of that in sludge in the basins before we clean them out. Which, right now, we have our own clamshell catch basin truck, and you've seen it. Everybody's seen it around town. In 2 years, they're going to eliminate the ability to use the clamshells and go into all hydro machines. And when you see the cost of a hydro vac truck, that'll astound you. I mean, that stuff is going to run into big money, and disposal of that is going to be very difficult too. Second big item is we've done some of it. We have what I call a non-GIS mapping of all the outfalls in town. That was done by Bob Swanson when he was here, and it's pretty accurate. What we haven't done is we haven't determined the need to sample those outfalls, because MS4 says you have to sample outfalls that eventually go to the ocean, because the ocean is federal waters, and the whole thing about MS4 was to try to, clean up federal waters. And there's a lot of mandate. You have to do testing on the water. We're in a consortium to do that. We're in the Neponset Basin Consortium, because we're going to save some money by combining all the towns and doing all the testing under one company and with one set of things. But MS4 is also going to put some burdens on contractors around town. They're all going to have to get trained in sweeps, and they're going to have to operate them on all construction sites, and you know what those are. And they're not easy, because you have to maintain a daily log every day of what your sweeps look like, and any breaches have to be documented, and what you did to fix them has to. And we have to do the same thing with our projects from now on, from July 1st on.
Roger, excuse me, can you explain what you mean by sweeps?
Sweeps,
and
stormwater pollution prevention programs. Sweeps. That's what the acronym is. It's to prevent pollution from stormwater from going into the waters of the federal government. That's what it's designed to do. Now, having said that, we had a mighty big change in the federal government a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know where we're going to go from there. And I would be the last guy in the world to sit here and try to predict what's going to happen. So we'll just have to follow the procedures that are being required now, and we'll see what happens down the road. It's not just the catch bases. We need because of other mandates, preparation of, let me put my glasses on because I'm not even reading my own notes. Oh, we need to do a public involvement program in the stormwater, in the MS4 program. And that requires, we have to have contact with the public at least twice for every household in Foxborough in a 5-year period. And we have to explain the program to them, and it has to go out in writing, and it has to be done, like I said, in blocks. And we have to do that with all commercial and residential. That's something we have never had to do before. It requires the development of the brochures, then the explanation after, because when you send somebody something in the mail to somebody's house, the chances are pretty good that they're not going to read it. And the ones that are going to read it are call and ask questions, and they want to know all about it. These are the unfunded mandates that have been imposed on us. We delayed them from 1999 until 2016, but it's over delaying this year. We're not going to be able to do it. I don't know what the cost is going to be, and I wouldn't try to sit here and tell you, but I know it's not going to be for nothing. It's going to cost a lot of money to comply with it.
And what if you're not in compliance?
They can fine the town.
Withhold federal aid.
They can withhold federal aid. That's correct. There's a lot of things they can do. And that's a question all contractors ask themselves too. What happens if I don't comply with this? And you know what? Well, they implemented MS4 in Florida about 10 years ago, and the contractors have paid big fines down there for not following the guidelines. So same thing's going to happen here.
Thank you.
Roger, you were talking, Chris had questioned what the savings have been with combining the DPW and water and sewer. Have you been able to use the same, I know the office staff is more efficient because they're taking care of both the DPW side and the water side.
Yeah, we're
But
going
how
to
about-
hold off on new employees.
Yeah, but how about the guys going out on the street every day? Are they
We're short.
interchangeable. But I mean, are you able to use some people from water?
You
To
can't.
work on things?
The water guys have to have special licenses to work on water, so you can't take highway guys or tree and park guys who don't have the licenses and have them do any of the functions in water, because
Plowing, right?
But-
Plowing
we
is
do
the-
combine them
yeah,
on snow plowing.
Plowing.
Everybody
Okay.
works on snow plowing.
Hadn't
Yeah.
happened.
Right, that hadn't happened, and now it does.
Yeah.
And we've eliminated a few of the private contractors in the course of doing that. The biggest bulk of them came down 2 years ago. Then we got hit with the big blizzards right after that. But we survived.
Yeah.
We got through it. But that's what's happening, and we're busy. And none of this could happen, and I gotta say this, none of this could happen without the great people that we've got working for us. These guys work hard every day. That you don't see them standing around on the common drinking coffee or leaning on shovels. When they're up there, you watch that team that Dave Lalibert has clean off the common, and there's 5 guys up there, and everybody's going like crazy. And they just do it by almost by rote now. They know exactly what they gotta do.
Science.
The school department can tell you about our leaf pickup and the things we have to do with the fields. These guys work hard. And my highway guys, I mean, we did your subdivision last year. It hadn't been touched in maybe 40 years, Dave. And, we adjusted every basin and every casting up there. Some of that can be contracted out, but it costs more money to contract it out, because the minute we contract, we gotta pay wage rates. And there's a lot of other things that are associated with contracting too.
But also, have you saved money? Like, I know you, the town, you guys paved the I Go School playground, parking lot.
You can ask Bill about that.
Yeah, I mean, you worked on the flagpole, that project.
Yeah, we did
And the fence and stuff like that. So are there?
we did the booth parking lot
Yeah. So-
in-house.
So when you do things in-house, that also is a saving.
We paved a huge parking area up at Payson Road with wrap, and now it's almost as hard as regular asphalt.
Yeah, wrap is, explain what wrap is. just so-
Recycled asphalt product.
Recycled asphalt.
Yeah.
so
So I think we can go department by department. I don't think that's.
I know,
what we
you can
wanna do
ask a
here.
million questions.
Yeah, I think the basic gist was, let's take a look at it and see what we can do. Maybe the ship has sailed for fiscal year 18, I don't know. But I like the fact of a budget subcommittee. You get some members, if any of the members would like to participate
Well,
in that.
We will commit to you that we will try and keep this budget as lean as we possibly can. I mean, we go through that process pretty rigorously. Even just preparing our own internal office budgets, we went through that process internally and said, look, we're not gonna increase, we're gonna try not to increase our bottom line, period. If we're gonna add something, we have to take away from something else. So that's the approach we've been using. I don't know what the other budgets look like. I mean, Randy is still putting all those numbers
Just
together.
compiling them now.
Just compiling them now, so we'll take a look at that. But I had that conversation with all my department heads. I said, this is a year we're gonna have to take a really hard look at where we're at. And that message that the board had conveyed to me was very clear. And I conveyed that pretty clearly to the rest of the troops as well.
If,
So, good.
Okay.
And so I wanted to look at it a little different perspective, and Roger, I appreciate the focus on your department. Sometimes we get sidetracked. You're one department in the whole, very large, many departments. Let me just backtrack a little bit. When we brought this up at the school committee, and then, again, it kind of got maybe it was the newspaper press that said there's going to be a showdown of talking about the budget. So, the years that I've been doing this, very seldom, I don't remember one time that we have had a discussion between the policymakers. Randy is the finance guy, town manager, they're kind of under us, but this table in the last 7 years has never had that discussion. I've heard that, it's too late this year to do it from this board, or we're, cutting our nose off to spite our face, and those are kind of reactions that I was kind of dismayed a little bit, because I think if we don't have the discussion at this table on the very first day, or with the school committee, when are we gonna have it? So, all those numbers, it would have been nicer to get it a little earlier than yesterday, because there's a lot of stuff, but I don't.
Apologize, it
Yeah.
was a short notice.
But there's 18
assignment.
pages, okay, so in my mind, I've been kind of, the last couple of weeks, am I going in the right direction in my mind on where we're going on the big picture? Okay, the department stuff aside, you did a nice job putting the best and brightest to support where our money is being raised and submitted, and I don't have any questions with that. But I wanted to talk to the board on a different level. There's one letter that I got from Kenneth Elevitz, and I don't know him very well. I think he's on one of our boards. Does anyone know?
He was involved in the budget, in the town hall.
Yeah,
Town hall
working group.
At one time.
So he sent me a letter, and I asked him if I could, why doesn't he send it to the rest of the board? And his response was, he didn't really feel like the board's going in that direction, so he wasn't gonna push it. And I asked him, I said, do you mind if I shared it? So I'll read it quickly, because I think it's stepping back from the rows and columns on Excel spreadsheets and kind of puts it in a different context from what I could understand a little better. I heartily applaud the efforts to rein in town spending. We need a paradigm shift. When I came to Foxborough in 1979, our population was 14,000. Our budget was 14 million, and the Mass state budget was 14 billion. For 2015, Foxborough's population is 17,000. The town budget was 69 million, and the generous state budget was 36 billion. Where the state budget has not quite tripled since '79, the town budget has nearly quintupled. On a per-person basis in '79, Foxborough spent $1,000 per resident, and Massachusetts spent $2,500 per resident. In 2015, those numbers are $4,000 per person for Foxborough and $5,500 for Massachusetts. So from 1979 to 2015, Foxborough went from spending a quarter of what the state spent per person to 3/4. So what this information that we had didn't have in it was the towns around us that we compare. So I took the 24 that we looked at when we were hiring for the union. We looked at that, and I took out the Concords, I took out the Lexingtons to pretty much put around here. So we are within 3% of the average salary. So what people make in Foxborough is within 3% of the average towns around, so we're in that. But you look at our population, we're 24% less than our surrounding area on that same group. So we have a smaller population spending the same amount on the average. And what that equates to is we're spending almost $200 more per person in town. So smaller people, smaller population spending the same amount. It's a lot more money to spend per person, right? And that's coming from the same, state data. So when you go back to things that have increased, you look at the ambulance receipts, they've gone, 2.5 times up to 2.2 million. The roads that were increasing at a phenomenal rate are because increased taxes, the meals tax that are going into that, the same thing with the OPEB. But our basic spending keeps going up when our population stays the same. So when Ken sent that chart, basically, it's showing the population is dead flat since 1980. The consumer price index has gone up, incline, but it's been pretty standard. Foxborough goes straight up. All right, so the population hasn't changed, our spending keeps going up, and when I see things on here like smaller government, I don't see it. I don't see, the 7 years I've been doing this, when we're consolidating the DPW, bringing in consolidated maintenance and ITs and stuff, I don't see the staff getting smaller. I don't see the salaries getting smaller. I see it going up. And when you put a wish list together of the things we could use, we all have that. Downtown parking lot, that's not on anything on the top 100 that I have, but it's going on a thing that says we're spending wisely, we've got everything in order. But the flip side is there's a lot of stuff that we could do better. When we asked for this back in November, and I know you sent a memo out to all the department heads, I thought this presentation was going to say, here's how we can save, here's how we consolidate. But you're justifying the spending, and I'm asking the board, if we've got, and we keep, there was one slide up there on page 8 that said, we paid for town hall with 500,000, we didn't have to ask the taxpayers. Where's the money coming from? It's the taxpayers. It's in the budget, so it didn't hurt as much, but it's still the taxpayers. So what we're talking about on a 2.5% increase is $1 million. A 1.25% is 500,000. But if you look at the years that we've gone, from 2012, the total increase was 2.4%. Then it went up to 3.5, 3.1, 3.6, 5.1. Only 2.5% of that, but the 5.1, we're talking 3.4 million. So with all the, the years of experience that we're saying in that slide of top management and professionalism, if we can't lose 500,000 on an almost $70 million budget without the panic of, we're not going to get the funding shut off from the federal government if we don't do the MP4s. We're not going to go crazy firing people with $500,000. That's the panic call. And I think we deserve a little time at the table to talk as a policy. We can certainly ask questions to the finance, but at what point is enough enough? The money keeps coming in, and we're putting it in there, and then we're justifying it. So at some point, we've got to say, can we live on unless our population is going up dramatically, which it's not, we get the same amount of people. And when I see people thinking about, well, let's solve it by shifting the tax base so the resident gets a little bit more, the businesses is going to get the other side. There's no difference. What I'm looking at is taking the 500,000 off the top. So in 5 years, that's $76 that the resident is saving. That 500,000 change into 550,000 if you go the 2.5% compounded on that. So the people will start saving a lot. And I tell you, $76 a year plus the stuff that we've taken out of the budget. We used to have trash service. That's a few $100s that we're paying that's not in the tax. So the money's coming in, the salaries are going up, the people that we're saying smaller government, we don't have smaller government. It says it on a slide, but you ask the department heads, nobody's, putting the DPW together was great, and I supported that. It was efficiency. You don't have the water department, changing a line, and then a year later, the pavement department not knowing what they did. It's working very well, but it's not smaller government. We don't have smaller government in Foxborough. You look at the staff at this table and all the other departments, I don't remember the last time we fired people because it was a budget issue. And I don't want to take away from what Randy's doing in the town management, because we have gone through the contracts and they're all in line, and we've gone through all the insurance and we've, efficiently. But I don't think it's far-fetched to say we're a smart group, we can lose $500,000 and go to 1.25. And if you go back to that slide where, all those nice things were happening, the flagpole and the lane property, those are volunteers. They work in the private sector too. They've cut. I guarantee you more volunteers will come if they see the town doing their share and cutting also. So, and again, Randy, you do a nice job, but there is slides that go with this just to give the opposite. We've misspent things. We've had lawsuits. We've had people leaving, and that's not on the slides. But we have the ugly side and the good side. I think we need to balance that and recognize that the money that's coming in, it's coming in. There's not many towns that can pay off the OPEB. 3 maybe? Started off at 700,000. Now we're spending over $1 million that are coming in on the meals tax, which we didn't have a few years. At what point are we not going to tax to the limit?
Well,
So there's my soapbox.
Yeah. So when you do a comparison, a dollar for dollar comparison based on population, obviously the higher the population, the lower the spend's going to be. But you have to do it on a comparative basis on services. You got to take into account, do they have it in those communities? Is there a charter school, which is a real effect on our budget? And I think I'm not.
But the charter
I'm not
school
I'm
in
not-
town doesn't make it. Everybody shares a charter school. Students go to the charter school. Doesn't
No.
matter where it's housed, right?
If,
$1,500,000 is just ours.
that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
our share.
But you go over to North Attleboro, where are their students? They're going to a charter school too, right?
Yeah, but I think what Randy was saying was, what does this town spend on the charter school that if it weren't for that?
Oh, yeah, but
there's no-
Foxborough is no different than any other town.
Well, not every
Right.
community participates with the charter school. I
It
mean,
is actually, 'cause we're obligated to provide transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spent, when I
Yeah,
first
so
got married, we
it's a
sent
little-
kids to the charter school. I lived in Plainville. Plainville's part of that. So if they send 10 students, they're paying, they get less money for those 10 students, just like, so I'm saying it's not unique, just because the charter school's in the town, all the
Right.
other towns in this area pretty much are in the same boat as us.
It's just a pretty big financial hit. I looked at it another way. Since 2001, 93% out of all of the growth in our education aid, the Chapter 70 aid, which is the biggest aid that we have, 93% was gobbled up through charter assessment from 2001 to date. That's huge.
But going back to what I said, I think I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think just doing it dollar for dollar based on population could be a little bit misleading. We gotta look at the services provided. And do
Oh, yeah, no, that's.
do comparable
yeah, I agree.
services
Yep.
and look at what are they spending for those same services? And then I think you can get a true comparison. So I don't disagree with you. I think we should take a look at it. Is now the right time? I don't know. Now might be the right time to start it for the next fiscal
It's
year.
good to have a
or-
conversation.
But
I
let
think
me
it's-
ask you,
yeah,
I
it's good to
agree with
have
you,
the-
but so
it's
if you
good
look
to
in
have the
2012,
process.
when the budget went up 2%, 2.4%, in 2016, it went up 5.1%. That's a lot of extra money. Have we gotten more services for that money? Population hasn't changed. I don't feel like I'm getting a lot more services. Schools are fantastic, DPW, the roads are being plowed, but all that extra money, I can't say in the last 4 years, I'm grateful for all the extra services at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to do a budget comparison to
Yeah,
what.
what triggered that
Yeah,
one jump?
yeah. I mean,
Cost of doing business.
So what I'm saying is, let's, just like you did on the town hall, you put the ceiling down by having the money in for the town hall project in the budget, bring the ceiling down a little bit more, and if we're wrong, we'll address it next year.
But the dangerous part about being wrong is
It's a bigger
it's
hit
a
on the
bigger hit
taxpayer.
on the taxpayer.
But hey,
It might be a one-time savings, but, you know, do you wanna get hit a little bit on an ongoing basis, or do you wanna get a little bit back?
Yeah, if I was
Today-
cutting down, if I was cutting everything in half, I'd say, yeah, that's too
Mhm.
much. We're doing 1.25 of only the 2.5 out of the 5%. So it's a smaller increment of the larger point. But, hey, if we're sitting here a year from now and we haven't had the layoffs that people think we're gonna have because of this, and we're not, you know, the first knee-jerk reaction is we're gonna have layoffs. I don't think we are. I think the people that we have in our department heads, in the group that we have working, can figure out how to lose that without cutting off our nose to spite our face. If it was more than that, I'd say, yeah, you know, but looking at the numbers, and believe me, I spent most of the day going through all the reports from this year and last year. And if you talk to department heads, they'll say the department's running fine, but the other department could use some. They're not, you know, people talk about this, it's a small enough town, but, you know, when that memo went out to them in November, that the selectmen said, you know, we're putting the top down. I thought this presentation was gonna be good news on how everyone's gonna be doing that. Granted, it's only been a month.
Yeah, we haven't, and
but-
not only that, we've not actually seen the final budget yet. So
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying to you at this point is that now's a good time to have you work with us and watch the process as we go through it. And we'll go through it, and we'll trim as much as we can. And because without, you know, I guess what you're saying to me is that you trim $500,000, but don't cut services in the process.
Yeah, that's.
That seems to be the
Yep.
message I'm hearing. Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay. So my answer to you would be, we'll take a look, all right, and we'll see what we can do. And it comes to the point where we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna cut services if we do this. Then I'm gonna have to come back and say, look, this is the problem we're gonna create.
Well, I think,
I mean, it's-
I think that's fine. I think that's what I asked anyways, that if we went to 2%, or 1.25, or 1.5, or 3/4, what are the ramifications? And I understand it's only been a short time, but,
Well, we
you know,
will go
I
through
just
the-
want people to understand, we're not cutting the budget.
Mhm.
We're not cutting the
Well,
budget. We're not
cutting the-
increasing it.
We're cutting the level of increase.
Correct.
And-
We're not
so-
increasing
so let
it
me-
to the
So
full
let me just
amount,
say
yep.
it the correct way.
Mhm.
Because we're gonna go through our process. And I don't know where the numbers are gonna fall out, because, we just realized the other day that our health insurance costs may go higher than we thought. We're in the process of looking at how we can address that. There are other cost issues, I think on some state aid issues that you've identified.
Yeah,
A couple $100,000 right away.
If I could add, because I think it's one important
Yeah.
point, is
Yeah.
that on Randy's slide, when he showed the state aid reduction, or effectively staying flat, for the last 10 years, we have in that last 10-year period gone from about $2.5 million in outside resources down to about $1.9 million in outside resources. And the biggest bulk of that is cuts in the state aid side of it. So grants that we apply for and that we were able to get, which we do vigorously to bring in, have continued to drop and go away. That's a cost to the town, unfortunately, because it's part of how we fund the school side budget. So, where you saw $2.5 million of our overall expense, when you see our budgets, you see it as an all-in budget. A lot of communities don't do that. So you see all of our payrolls, all of our expenses, less whatever revenues we can bring in, whether it's from a revolving fund, a state grant, federal grant, or the circuit breaker. And so those reducing effectively puts more strain on the budget as well, because it's less resources that the school side has to cover its basic cost.
Right.
Yeah, and this is not the meeting to challenge, and I have
I
utmost
just want-
respect for the way that the school is running. But to be fair, if there was a side-by-side comparison on this starting in 2008, I would say, how many town employees have we had in 2008? How many students have we had? What was the classroom size in 2008? And now it's 2016. So your costs are going up, but the students are going down. The teacher salaries, we had some big longevity people leaving that had the top salaries. Did we replace new people at that top salary? So, or do we not hire, or, I don't have that information. And again, this came yesterday.
We didn't do that.
We're volunteers. I would love to sit and go through all that stuff, but
Is that going to be the function of the Board of Selectmen Budget Subcommittee? To get that?
I mean, assuming that
information
the
for you, or
board
what-
wishes to form that, the recommendation was
I-
to
you know what?
plug a member or two of the board into the process, so you could see exactly, what goes on with every department and challenge every department.
I don't think the intent is to micromanage the process. I think the intent is to put a limit on the expenditure growth. I think that's what
yeah.
you're getting at.
if we can put the ceiling a little lower and say, can you work with that? Can you lose the money in the budget by not increasing it 500 out of the 3.4 million that we're looking to increase it?
I think
And how
what
do you
you're
do
hearing
that?
from the town manager is that any number can be delivered that the board wants, but I think what we're respectfully asking for is participation in the process to review where you, as the policy board, think that those cuts should be made.
See, that's where we differ, because I can go all the columns and all the department heads and figure out, you don't need that ream of paper, you don't need that,
That's the
student.
sort of
If you
involvement
want us
we
to
would
do that,
welcome.
or,
That's micromanaging.
or it's micromanaging, I don't mind doing that. It's not my role to do it. I would rather say, department heads, we're looking as a policy to bring the ceiling down 500,000, so we're giving a little bit of break. Can you guys do that? If you can't, then we'll go in and do
Well,
it.
I think
No,
that's
but-
the function of the subcommittee, to find out if it can,
If it's-
this isn't going to be a permanent committee. It's just going, from what I understand, it's just going to
To start
be,
the conversation, so, because,
Yeah.
well, let me just say, I don't even see it as you sitting there and saying to us, go cut that, go cut that. I wouldn't ask you to do that, all right? I want you to observe the process that we go through, and then, and you see, and then at the end of the day, I can say, what do you think about this? Because I don't want to bring something back that nobody's going to be able to live with. Because when you go through this process, I've been through this process before, where I've gone through it, and I've cut stuff out, and everybody said, people come back to me and say, no, I don't want that, I want that, I want this cut. I don't want that cut, I want this cut. It comes back to a point where I want it to be a productive exercise where everybody understands the process that we go through.
I think that's the primary reason the school department, the school committee members participate
They
in a
currently
budget
do it now.
subcommittee on the school side. So they engage in that exercise.
There's a couple other things you need to know, too. Within the budget, within the budgets, different departments have different parameters. DPW is totally different than fire and police from a standpoint of, we're heavy on materials, heavy on the things we buy. We're not heavy on personnel. We're light on personnel all the time, and we have been since I came here. So when you say, you know, if you just took a straight line and said, okay, each department, the total of the department budget on the town side is this, and every department has to cut that percentage from their budget. In my budget, it may have to come in materials.
So I think we're saying the exact same thing, Roger. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to look at anybody's line items and feel that I know more that, you know, your backhoe versus your manpower
But it's the
versus your
line
paper.
items that make up the bulk of our budget. It's not the personnel is the same as it's been for actually, it's less than it has been for 5 years. One less than we started with 5 years ago. And you know, granted, there's been, you know, salary increases that took place over that time and changes in union contracts and things like that that make it go up. And there's also been a shift in things we do to a degree. But I'm just saying, when you got a material-sensitive budget and you and you plan for next year and cut that budget, and then the private sector says the price of oil is going up to $75 or $100, you got to make that up somewhere. And there's no way to make it up except going back to town meeting and saying we need more money. And at that point,
So if the answer is, you know, to go from 2.5, 3.5, 4, 5.5 every year, if the answer is that's just the way it is and we have to live with it, so be it. But I don't think it is. I don't think.
Well, the
I think
only
we're-
way you're going to
yeah.
find out is if you
Is having a
participate
subcommittee.
in the subcommittee.
Yes.
No,
Well, then you're
I-
going to, then Jim, you're going to have to trust the
My direction-
professionals that
what-
we have hired to do the budgets.
So Bill, let me ask you, there's no way you can lose, the question I asked before.
I haven't said that. I have not said that.
No, but
And
the question I asked before
yeah.
was, where's the level of pay, you know, the increments, as it goes down, what do we lose? If you can't tell me, and I don't want to sit on a committee and do it, what's our options
No,
here?
so the bottom line is that it's about $500,000. If you were to go to a 1.25% cut, that was the number you threw out before, so we used that as a benchmark. You know, a 2.5% increase is about $1 million, a little over $1 million. If you cut it to 1.25, it's $500,000. So, and you know, the question I have is why 1.25? I mean, could it be
Yeah,
a different number? Could it be a different
The
number?
1.25 came from the meeting that we had.
Right.
Because I wanted to bring it up, and I wanted a policy discussion
Right.
with the selectmen and the
Right.
school committee.
Okay.
And what we, at the end of that meeting, we were talking about layoffs and cuts, and they said, well, if we need a direction, we need a number.
Right.
And that was gonna
Right.
be the end of the need, so that's where that got thrown
Okay.
out. So my biggest issue is this board has not, this board, meaning the selectmen, not the 5 individuals, are policymakers, and we don't talk about policy. We hear the numbers come, and we focus on, you know, one department and spend 20 minutes on it, in the big picture of where this town is going and why the increase every year, when we're not small government.
Right.
It gets lost, and it just,
So-
after a
so let me-
while,
so
someone's
I'm-
gonna reel it back
I'm gonna
in.
answer your question, Jim.
Yeah.
I said, the answer is, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know until I go through the process and identify what I can cut out of the budget. So the question is, we know what we can afford in terms of increase. That means I have to pare that back and then find if that can work within that framework. And the answer is, I don't know yet until I go through that process.
Instead of setting a dollar value, could we look at a percentage of expenditure growth? If we can rein in that expenditure growth, so we're not at the 4.5, 5.5, 6%?
I think what I'd like to see, you can put any number you want. It just.
Well, that's
my
just
concern
it.
is-
I don't want to put a number on it.
Yeah, I just don't know
want
what it'll mean to you at this point until I go through the process and say to you, look, I've been able to trim it back by $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. It could be more, it could be less. I don't know until I go through that exercise. But it's clear from what I'm hearing, at least from one member, very clearly, that you want to try and trim that number back by an X amount of number. My only goal in asking you to form the subcommittee is to say, okay, we want to observe what you're doing here so that when you come back, it's a legitimate number, and it's a legitimate number, number one. You went through a legitimate process, number two, and three, those are numbers those cuts are numbers I can support. You follow me? So,
Yep,
I mean,
yep. And I do respect the board, we've got 5 members.
right.
If I'm the squeaky wheel and you don't want to do this, we'll end it now, and don't take direction from one.
We have to look at it, because, I mean, it's not sustainable. I mean, I
Well,
don't see it.
your current growth is sustainable. If you can't.
We wouldn't be presenting
yeah,
budgets that are not sustainable.
That's right.
That's the whole focus of our
We are
conservative
absolutely
philosophy.
limited by those numbers.
Sustainable.
And what I would say to you, and I represent to you, is that, and I say this in every community I've ever worked in, if you want to get to the point where you want to start reducing taxes, you have to continue to grow your economy. If you grow your economy, you're going to be very successful in doing that. That's exactly what I did in Dedham, and they're one of the 43 on the list.
Dedham's on the
that actually
list.
has additional levy capacity.
The majority of those
Because they were able
towns,
to not increase taxes as high.
the majority of the towns that
Absolute fact.
don't tax to the levy limit are those that have very large property tax values, or have increased them well beyond what we have, including Dedham.
So it's a formula that works. This is something that you're asking me to do, and I certainly hear it loud and clear. I don't know what it means, though, until we go through the exercise. And I have to understand the ramifications of that exercise.
Fair enough, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta look at it.
Mark, you all right with that?
Yeah.
Ginny?
Did we
Randy?
did we give you clear direction? Or are you still
Well,
confused?
clear as mud, right?
Well, I mean, if it's what Bill just said, I mean, I'm clear about what we're
Yeah.
about to go
I mean,
through.
we're going to go through that process and try to get to the best number we can without cutting to the bone. I think that's what I'm hearing. Is that accurate? I mean, without.
So-
I'm not sure.
But just to reframe that, so any departments that have a need to, or have a request to improve or enhance the service, like some of the things that we've listed here, so in order to achieve that, de facto, there are no enhancements, because those would be the first things that would go.
Or.
So like the laborers that we're asking for, the free kindergarten, things like that, I mean, those are the things that would go.
Listen, the answer to that is yes and no, because I think what I have to understand is are there expenses within the budget that aren't expenses that were last year that won't be this year?
Right.
And so we can actually balance some of those, so we don't have to grow the budget incrementally that way. And so I don't know, and this is the process I use every single year, is to go through the budget process and not really respond to all the cuts, all the issues at the table. I go through it, I listen, I take in all the information, and then I start making quality decisions based upon the collective amount of money that's on the table, and see where we can make some of those things. Now, some of the things are pretty clear when right off the bat, but we'll do the best we can.
And let's be clear, I don't think any one of us wants to micromanage the whole budget process. I, for one, absolutely do not. I do 33 budgets a year. I do not want to do another one. So,
It's fine, and I don't want to impose on anybody, but I think it's important for people to understand that there is a rigorous process that we use. When we get to that point, and the biggest challenge we face is that our fixed cost number is the thing that worries me the most.
Bill,
Fixed
if I
costs.
can add too, are the unintended consequences that,
Yeah.
we don't know what kind of fines, would be if something went undone. MS4, FLSA,
Those are the things.
those
that
kind of things that
we
we're
don't
not
comply.
sure what it would cost, at the cost of a person or a service, that might end up down the road costing the town a lot more in fines or liability, so.
Does anyone know how much is enough? Like, say if the money that came in, we had projected, if we had $3 million came in rather than an extra $1 million from all the concerts and stuff, $3 million do it? $2 million? At what point do we say we're going to give back because we're now projecting it over to 2020? You know what I'm saying?
It's important
I'm not being
to-
facetious,
No,
but
No,
it's a good
it's a
question.
great
It's a fair
question.
question.
It's a
Fair
great
question.
framing
So-
question.
So it's really important to understand this number.
So based on the financial forecast that I presented last month, the out year looked like, meaning the 2020, I believe it was, based on all the information that we have to date, looks like that is going to be a very financially challenging year for the town. With that, and how you're able to gauge that is taxes are easily predictable. Unfortunately, state aid is pretty easily predictable now too, and the local receipts are. Sorry, I just lost my train. But free cash from other sources is the balancer. That's how we balance. We toggle between $1 million and $2 million funding the operating budget. When we're closer to $1 million, we're closer to, things are stable. When we're pushing $2 million, then we're stressing the finances of the town. And in 2020, we were pushing $2 million. So I can tell you right now, that's looking for, with what we have, what we know today, and all the new growth that's been projected, and we have incorporated some pretty large things in 2020. All things being equal, 2020 looks like a very, very challenging year for the town.
4 years out based on what we're seeing now.
3 budget cycles out.
Three out. Yeah.
All things considered, the way that
17,
we see them today.
Yeah.
You know.
And again, we have not been conservative in projecting new taxable growth on Route 1. We have not.
Right.
And that's still a stretch.
Yep.
And as I stated before, growing your local economy is extremely important to do that. Rebuilding of the downtown, building Route 1, doing all those things that will actually improve your overall tax base to the point where you can truly provide some relief to everyone overall.
But to
Those are
finish
very
the
important
thought, Jim,
Yeah.
all things being equal again, if we go out 3 years from that, and if we are fortunate enough to have the progression of significant new growth on Route 1, then I would say that's a point in time where you would see that we've reached an
Reevaluate it.
economy of scale where you'd be looking at the option of a dividend.
All things considered, the conversation is a good one. I mean, I want you to know that, because as a taxpayer myself, I always get concerned if I see things that I don't understand completely, and want to make sure that we're going in the right direction. Where I sit from today, and I see the operation that we have today, we have a great operation, not a good one, a great one. What you still need are things some of the basics in some areas. Having said that, I can understand the concern that taxpayers have about it going up, incrementally. A lot of the drivers of that are costs that are a little bit beyond our control. If that's the case, then the only way we drive that down is to look at your ongoing costs, which are your employee costs. The only way you truly reduce costs in the long term is reduce your employee costs. And that's not easy to do, I can tell you that.
Well, there's one,
Yeah.
if the money's not in the budget,
Mhm.
how many times do we sit with contracts and we say, well, can we afford it? Well, it's in the budget. If it's
Mhm.
not in the budget, you don't pay that amount on a new
Mhm.
contract. You don't.
Right. Well,
And we've set so many times saying, well, let's look at the towns around, this is where we want to be, do we have the money? Yes, so let's do it. If the money's not there, it gets pushed down. That's all I'm trying to
well,
achieve
I
here.
understand that, and we've actually factored that into our long-term planning. We take a look at that and see where we are in what we can, maybe look at some of those long-term costs. But the challenge is, what we want to do is we want to maintain our competitiveness. That's really important. I mean, I'll tell you why I feel so strongly about that. I've seen it when we're not, and it's a horrible position you want to be in, because now you're playing catch-up to bring you about yourself. Because then what happens is the people knocking on your door are the least qualified people, as opposed to the people who are truly qualified and even more qualified. That hiring good employees is the most important thing you can do.
But if you
Most important.
can't afford them, then you live without the top. I'm sorry that you.
I'm not
you
saying-
live,
I'm not saying you have to
it's an overly used thing, but you live within your means. If you don't have the
Understood.
money, you
And
don't
I'm not-
hire that.
And I'm not looking to hire the
Yeah.
top all the time. That's my point. I'm looking to try and hire the competitive employee that wants to come here and wants to spend time here and do a good job for this town.
Mhm.
That's important.
So at what point are you gonna be able to come back to us with,
After we finish our budget review process, which will be sometime in January.
Yeah, and I'd say late January.
can we make sure that's,
Well, actually, I would say we're required, by bylaw, to come back to the board your first meeting in February to present a, quote, balanced budget. So that's on the docket, already.
We do that already.
Right.
The
And
question
then
is
there's
to
still time.
that I want to see even before that.
Yep.
Maybe a special meeting in between there to kind of go through that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
give you
just
where we are.
like to kind of gauge.
Well,
your
the one thing
your progress.
knowing the board the way I know the board now, is that you're very process-oriented, okay? So I don't want to be in a position where I present you something and say, okay, you'll live with this. Because I always get this, don't do that, all right? So I'm not going to do that to you. That's why we're here tonight. I want to be able to say to you, let's go through our process, let's see what we can trim. We'll come back to you with I'll come back to you with my best recommendation, and then we'll talk about that before we come to the final budget presentation. Does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Roy.
Okay, I'm a little late. Sorry. It's okay. No,
No.
it's good discussion.
Sounds great.
And Selectmen's update, and this is gonna get a little uncomfortable. I'm obligated to address, Ginny's performance at the Walpole Board of Selectmen's meeting, on December 6th. And I just want everybody to know, I'm not speaking on behalf of my fellow board members, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Regardless of what the intent was, the reality is as follows. In my opinion, you showed no respect to the people of the town of Foxborough or the public process. You absolutely showed no respect to your fellow board members. Your appearance and speaking at the Walpole Board of Selectmen meeting was premeditated and calculated. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were on the speaking list that the selectmen had. You had spoken to Selectman McKenzie at some point prior to the meeting. You were introduced by the chairman as Foxborough Selectman Virginia Capola, and as such was representing the town of Foxborough.
That is not true.
In a couple of your comments to the crowd, you left out some facts. I'll just read some of the quotes. In reference to the MBTA pilot program, I quote, "All of a sudden, this came up, 2 weeks ago, and it was presented to us at a selectmen's meeting, not on the agenda. It was presented as part of our town manager's report." An email went out on November 10th, 3 or 4 days prior to that meeting, and I'll read the email as well. It basically outlined the meeting that our town manager and myself had with the MBTA, and basically outlined what was going to be discussed at the town manager's update. It's important to note that Bill, in the email, said, "I will provide more information to the board on Tuesday night, 11:15, as part of my town manager update, and I'm sure Chairman Feldman will add his input as well. If anyone wants to call me about this, feel free to do so." You did not reach out to Bill for more information. My guess is you reached out to Walpole, because come Monday morning, they already knew. Bill,
That is not
listen,
true.
I'm saying, this is my opinion.
Well, your opinion is wrong.
Fine.
Because that is not true.
Fine. All right, whatever. Bill was reaching out to the surrounding town managers to give them all a heads up, and the town of Walpole knew. 2, second here. Quote 2. "So in this proposal, when the selectmen were asked to vote, we said, okay, but we're going to have conditions. In the number 1 condition, and I'll read the letter that was sent to Mass DOT, condition number 1, that there would be no action taken by the MBTA which provide permanent overnight storage of trains in Foxborough. To tell you the truth, if I had written that, it would have been a little different. I would have said no overnight layovers in the town of Foxborough, ever." Subsequently, on November 30th, our town manager sent out a draft letter to the board members asking for comments and input. As soon as, I'll quote, "As this is a draft, I welcome any comments. Please do not share your comments with other board members out of respect for the open meeting law. As soon as everyone gets back to me, I will send the letter to Mr. Moeller." That was on November 30th. You did not respond to Bill with your comments. You actually had an opportunity to weigh in.
I did
on
send
that
an
letter,
email.
But you chose not to.
I'm sorry, but I did send an email.
Number three, and this is probably the worst.
You answered it.
This is probably the worst. And I know I'm probably not going to be too popular with my fellow selectmen, but you know what? Sometimes you have to be able to sleep at night, and sometimes you have to make decisions for the right reasons, and you really have to question whether these decisions that they're asking for is the right decision. Is this the right project for this area? And I can tell you, I don't think it is. So the Foxborough Board of Selectmen, which you are a member, voted 4-1 to support the pilot program with conditions. You were the lone vote against, so you go to another town to lobby against it and try to undermine this board. That is unconscionable. Unpopular with your fellow selectmen, that is up to them individually, but as far as I'm concerned, you lost my respect. Number 4. Walpole Selectman David Salvatore told the crowd he spoke to Virginia Coppola earlier in the day and shared one thing she told him during their discussion. I couldn't sleep thinking about the people in Walpole after that decision that Foxborough made. You need to ask yourself, do you represent the people in Foxborough or Walpole? To wrap this up, I want to point out that by speaking at the Walpole Board of Selectmen's meeting on 12/6, you were in violation of the Town of Foxborough Selectmen's Code of Conduct Policy. Specifically, items number 1.3, members of the board should abide by and carry out all board decisions once they are made. 1.5, Board of Selectmen members represent the entire community at all times. 3.5, members of the board will refrain from communicating the position of the Board of Selectmen to such parties as reporters or state officials unless the full board has previously agreed on both the position and the language of the statement conveying the position. I'm assuming that refers to other communities' Board of Selectmen. 3.6, board members will treat with respect the rights of all members of the board despite differences of opinion. So I got that off my chest. I feel much better now. Now I can sleep at night.
So now may I respond,
You
Mr.
can-
Chairman?
Yes,
Okay.
you certainly may.
I went to that meeting because I was going to that meeting anyway. I was not on the speaking agenda. I happened to know Nancy McKenzie, and when I walked into the room, I said hello to her. Mr. Salvatore called me that day, and he had some questions. I did not call Mr. Salvatore. I was not on the speaking
Well-
agenda. As a matter of fact, I told Nancy, she asked me, did you want to speak? And I said, no, Nancy, I'm just here to hear the presentation from the MBTA. I had absolutely no intention of speaking.
if you-
However, no, I had to listen to you. You
First
have
of
to
all,
listen to
stop
me.
pointing your
Oh,
finger at me.
please.
Oh, don't,
Please.
oh, please me. This
So-
is how you operate. This was the final straw. This happens many times.
How come when you guys do whatever you want, but whenever I do something, I get chastised at a selectmen's meeting?
That's not true.
Well,
We don't go to other
please.
communities and complain about
I
what the
did
board.
not, I did
It's on-
not go to
Ginny, it's-
complain.
it's
I
on
went.
tape.
Wait a minute, oh.
It's on tape.
Well, listen
Go
to me.
watch
The
it.
reason I sat there, I was not going to say anything. And then the MBTA made a presentation, and there were two things that I took exception to. And after the representative spoke and everything, I raised my hand because there were two things I wanted to say, because the MBTA was misrepresenting.
But that's.
The first, listen to
Okay,
me.
yep.
The first misrepresentation was that this station proposal was proposed by the town of Foxborough, which is not true. This proposal is an MOU between the Foxborough Realty Company and the MBTA. It is not proposed by the town of Foxborough, and the MBTA was trying to tell the people in Walpole that the town of Foxborough was pushing this. The town is not pushing this. This is a private entity pushing
The
this.
MOU
The
from
second-
2014, you're absolutely correct.
Right, and this MOU from 2015 is an MOU between Foxborough Realty and the MBTA. It has nothing to do with the town of Foxborough.
There's no new MOU. It's the same one from.
Well, that doesn't make any difference. It has nothing to do with the town of Foxborough. The second thing I wanted to say
is that and I gave them a history because they kept saying like, oh, we don't have, we can't, I don't know, I can't answer this question, I wasn't here. So I gave them a little history of what happened, because I thought it was important that at least the MBTA lady kind of know what was going on, and also the other people. And Jim, you were there, you heard what I said. My concern was, when they talked, there was a question about a layover in the town of Foxborough, and the woman said, and it's quoted in the newspaper, the woman said during the pilot program there would not be a layover in the town of Foxborough. However, in the permanent program, that's still on the table. And I said, we sent a letter, we voted 4-1 with the conditions, with the condition, that's when I read the condition, that there be no layover in the town of Foxborough. So what I said was, if this is still under consideration and the MBTA is going to do a layover, then what that woman said negates the letter that we sent, because we sent a letter saying the condition is that there be no layover.
But
And I hate to clue you, if this thing goes through, there is going to be a layover.
First of all,
because it's a terminus.
you made the decision to speak on behalf of the board.
No, I didn't. I said
Yes, you
these are my
did. You
personal
most certainly
remarks.
did.
You never
No,
once
you never
said.
said that.
You never once
Oh.
said these are your personal remarks.
You were
You
introduced-
said
you were
we,
introduced as a selectman?
every
Oh,
single
you guys,
time.
were you guys talking about this?
No.
No,
Oh.
it's very easy to go on the
you know what?
website and get the Walpole Board of Selectmen
I have
meeting,
every right to go to another town's
Absolutely.
but not
You're-
represent
you're
us.
absolutely
meeting. I'm
right.
not, I was answering questions. I was defending the town of Foxborough. The town of Foxborough was being accused of pushing this program. The town of Foxborough is not pushing this station. They were getting the Walpole people all riled up against the town of Foxborough. I hate to clue you, I was defending the town of Foxborough.
Well, if that's what your
And-
intent was, it certainly did not come across that way based on your comments.
You know what,
I-
your nose is out of joint. Fine. I'm not gonna apologize for going there, because I think I did the right thing.
Well, I think
And you know what, I will go again if necessary.
Good.
I would
Good.
actually just
So
like
what are you gonna do, fire me?
Can I get some
Can I?
clarification on a comment that I read in the paper about the rest of us? I don't know how you sleep at night, and you made the right decisions and we don't. Just explain that
I just
comment to
said,
me.
in my.
Explain that to me.
No, I was talking about a decision I made. I make decisions so I can sleep at night.
And you
I
said,
don't care what you guys do. I make a decision. And I was
basically-
talking about myself.
Well, you went there.
You know, I
and-
knew I was gonna be chastised at this meeting,
Absolutely.
I knew.
Why shouldn't you be?
because I don't deserve it.
Of course
so
you,
can we get clarification on the Selectmen's Code of Conduct and where I mean, is that, what's up with that? I mean, is it a violation?
I don't have it in front of me, so I'd have to go back and look. I mean, it's something that you all have when you first you come on the board, you all get it, but, I'd have to go look at it.
Well, you know, if the MBTA wasn't disingenuous when they were making that presentation, there would have been no need for me to say anything.
you shouldn't have said anything, Ginny. Ginny, you represented us. You represented, if you would have started your comments by saying, I'm here as an individual, not representing the town of Foxborough, things might be a little bit different. You didn't. Throughout your entire conversation up there on the podium talking, you represented us. And you kept saying, we as the board, we, over and over and over again.
As the board.
You absolutely at least a half a dozen times throughout your comments. And at the end, you threw out a little caveat, my fellow board members are going to be pissed at me.
Yeah.
You were wrong, Ginny, for getting up and speaking and representing us.
I wasn't representing you. I was
You
speaking on my
absolutely
own.
were representing us. It came through at the Walpole Board of Selectmen meeting, and it came through that you were representing us in any of the print comments.
I was not, no, it said in the reporter, it was my personal opinion.
Yeah,
He
That's
never
in there.
once
That's printed.
said that.
But it's in public record in the town of Walpole that you were introduced as a selectman from Foxborough.
Because I am a selectman in the town of Foxborough.
Right, so your comments are construed as being
No,
from the board.
no,
Yes, they
they
are.
know that.
Abs- they
No,
are, absolutely.
Of course
Because
they
I
are.
did not vote for this thing.
Of course they are.
We can indeed agree to disagree.
Well, Jim was there. Why, do you have a problem with
He
him?
didn't speak. He observed.
We would have had no problem with you being there if you didn't say anything. It was your right to be there and listen
So
in.
when the MBTA was saying false things, I'm supposed to sit there and say nothing?
That's Walpole's issue.
No, no, no.
Absolutely Walpole's issue.
What they were saying was the town of Foxborough was pushing this thing. The town of Foxborough is not pushing this. This is a separate entity
Listen,
working
we,
with the,
we have to be concerned with Foxborough and how the MBTA is dealing with Foxborough. We haven't gotten a response from that letter in the conditions. I don't know what Astrid Glenn said until I watched the video.
well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what they're gonna find, this pilot program. You're gonna wind up with a layover in the town of Foxborough affecting that whole area. Because they're not gonna, they're gonna do a
Let them come back
terminus.
and tell us that. Let them respond to the
They're not
letter.
gonna tell you that. They can't and they won't because they don't. They don't want to commit themselves.
Let them come back
You
and
know
tell
what?
us.
Let me tell you, when this thing goes through, I hope all the people in that area that are affected by a layover, you can call these guys. Don't complain to me, complain to them. I'm looking out for you people.
You're also looking out for Walpole, apparently.
Walpole has different issues.
You're right, and they're not Foxborough issues.
When the MBTA is disingenuous and does not, and makes false statements about the town of Foxborough, that's a Foxborough issue that I have to address.
Disagree.
No, you don't.
Not as a board member.
Not as a board member. No, you don't.
Linda?
Linda Walsh, 8 Pond Ave.
I don't have to listen to what you have to say.
She
right.
just got recognized by
I
the
got
board.
recognized.
Go ahead.
So you're gonna chastise me too?
Oh, Ginny.
I wasn't going to, Jenny, no. I was going to make a simple statement, trying to help you out as much as you try to help us out. I don't like that attack, Jenny. I really didn't. That just threw me way off. All right, so at any rate, there was many times when I sat on the board, majority rules. I didn't like it, but you have to get along to get along. So when you went to Walpole and made your comments, I heard him say that the Selectman Jenny Capola from Foxborough asked to speak. And you were the
I
speak.
did not ask to speak.
I'm just going by what I saw on the video.
Well, that was wrong. I did not.
So
I
you
raised
have
my hand to speak, but I had
Asked
no
to speak.
intention of speaking there when I got there.
Okay, but you did, and you know something? All discussion needs to be at this table. You should have brought that up tonight during citizens' input to say,
No, I
Ginny,
was waiting.
you
for-
could have said,
I was waiting for the selectmen's discussion, right now. This is when I was gonna bring it up. I was gonna mention that I had gone to the meeting, and this is what transpired.
Right.
That's what I was gonna do.
well, we all got,
The
we all-
chairman
well, we
goes
all-
first.
well, we all got what happened because we saw it on video. And I just think,
Patty?
I don't know, I go on Facebook a lot, so I see things, that's all. So at any rate, I just think that, it's difficult enough of a job, but if you're losing sleep over it, Ginny, I think that the best thing is from now on, you just recuse yourself from any discussion of this or decisions to be made. I really think you should. If it's hurting you that bad and you take it that personally that you're going to attack me when I just stand up here, something's wrong, Ginny. It's really affecting you. So I really think that from, going forward, maybe you just recuse yourself. I just don't know. I don't like to see the board like this. And I certainly just hope going forward that every discussion stays at that table. That's where it needs to be.
Thanks, Linda. Anybody have any updates? Other than that one? Okay.
You know, I do have one more thing to say, and I guess it sort of piggybacks after the long conversation we had with, you know, our finance director and our upcoming budget. And I know, obviously, it's been well-known Ginny doesn't like the idea of the MBTA station. But I got to say how important it is, from my point of view, that we get that station. For our growth of Route 1 to help with our financial, wherever we're going, 2, 3, 4 years from now. I mean, there's so many, the survey, the Economic Development Committee, the people we've talked to, the importance of the continued growth on Route 1 and how important that MBTA station is to that growth. And not only the growth, whether it involves the Foxborough Realty Group or not, but even to the point of Schneider Electric coming back and saying how important it is for their potential staying here in Foxborough 5, 6, 7 years down the road, how important it is to have an MBTA station here that just that we got to go forward with that, and how important that continued growth in that part of town is. Thank you.
I just had something real quick, not earth-shattering, but look, we're 5 volunteers. We're all doing what we think is best for the town. I don't agree that, you know, she spoke, but Ginny is passionate. She did what she thought was good for the town, for the residents and all that stuff. So, you know, we got to, I don't want to go from meeting after meeting with anger, and we've been through that with the casino. People have lost friends. It's not, you know, I was at that meeting, I was asked to speak, and I really wanted to listen because I planned on going to the MBTA meeting, and I wanted to know what the issues were, not so much with Walpole, but what the response was from the MBTA, because I didn't know if it was going to be taped, and I went with somebody else just to sit in the back and listen. But Ginny doesn't live in that area. She's not affected by the layover, but the passion that she has for the people in that area, you know, maybe it was a little misguided for speaking, and it did sound like you were speaking for the selectmen, but maybe we can just take a little bit of a breather and move past this a little bit.
I have the utmost respect for anybody that wants to say what's on their mind, okay? But just don't represent yourself as speaking for the Board of Selectmen or the town of Foxborough. That's all. I think those discussions need to be at this table.
Well, when you went to the MBTA with the town manager, the rest of us didn't know you were going.
I think it's because he was chairman.
Chairman.
I've done that
You
too.
don't know what he does have.
Anyway, we reported it back to the next meeting anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
Actually,
We didn't know before.
That's that afternoon.
Found out that afternoon. I happened to be in Boston. I met Bill, and we actually, when we spoke after the meeting, I said, we need to let the board know, and that's when the
sent the
email came
email
out,
out as soon
the
as I came
same day. So there was no hidden agenda there. We were very upfront.
Well, it would have been nice to go have an email before you went, oh, by the way, Chairman Feldman and I are going into the MBTA office in Boston to discuss possible train station. That would have been nice to know. Oh, that's okay. You guys
You know,
can do
don't turn this, don't turn this around as, you know, it's all my fault. I didn't go to another town as a member of the Board of Selectmen and speak, so.
I spoke on behalf of the town of Foxborough, defending the town of Foxborough against the false statements made by the MBTA. That's what I did. I had no intention of speaking. I told them I had no intention of speaking. And I had no intention of speaking. But when they said 2 false statements, it had to be corrected.
Perception is reality when it's on video. So, and it's public record now.
One last thing on Selectmen's update. I know you sent an email, and we just want to let the citizens know about the brand-new flagpole with the internal
Yes.
problems.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were,
No, no.
I thought you were making fun of me.
I'm
I say, "Yay, too, Brutus."
No,
Yeah.
just to let everybody know, that's why
Yeah.
the flag isn't up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's gonna be, actually, the company's gonna be out on Thursday this week to try and address it. It seems to be that there was a problem with one of the mechanisms, the steel, and it was not strong enough, so I think they're gonna try and find a way to address it.
The steel cable inside?
I think it was the steel mechanism was not strong enough.
Okay. Not the pole itself, it's
The pole itself is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
The pole itself is fine. It was the mechanism inside that appears to be faulty, so. But I just went back and looked, and you did send me an email, but it was more of a general comment. I didn't, with respect to the comment that was in the letter. I thought I was looking for the comment that you said about the letter
The
itself.
comment I sent you.
It was more of a
before,
general, it was more of a general.
I thought it would be incorporated in the letter that you were sending out. Believe me. I
Well,
send
that was a
emails.
pretty long comment.
Yes, it was.
And so, so I didn't, so I didn't take that to mean it was a comment about the letter, so I just want to clarify that, so.
No, my suggestion in the letter is that we get it, it's all very well if we put our conditions in writing, but what you have to do is get the conditions in writing from the MBTA, because otherwise it means nothing. Because obviously it does mean nothing, because they're not gonna go by the conditions that you people set.
Well, I think the thing that we have to wait for is a response.
Yeah.
And once we get a response, then we can discuss it further. And I'll bring it back and the board can have its discussion.
Okay.
So.
We'll talk about the budget again? I thought that was bad.
Action items?
We stay off the budget now?
Town manager.
Update?
Anybody else, anything? No, this, okay. Well, that's kind of a hard act to follow, by the way. But, on a good note, I am holding my annual holiday breakfast for everyone to come, and you're all certainly welcome to attend at Foxborough Country Club, 10 to 12. All the employees are invited to attend, and we have a pretty good turnout, so bring your appetite. We have lots of food. And
Date?
What day is that?
It's set for next Wednesday, the 21st, from 10 to 12. So you're free to come any time during that period of time.
Our employees come in shifts, so we have a 10 to 11
So
shift
we
and
have-
then an 11 to 12 shift, so
So
that there's
officers always get
coverage.
covered during the time. So it's good, usually a good day out, so. I do want to speak about the ribbon cutting that was held at the new Hilton Garden Hotel last Thursday night. It's great to see another new hotel that's fully functional, and really a high-quality facility. I was really pleased to see that kind of construction being done. And they are, obviously, the same company owns both hotels, the Renaissance as well as the Hilton Garden, and it was actually a very nice event. So it's good to see another new hotel in town. On Friday, I attended the luncheon for the Mass chapter of the American Planning Association, where Foxborough was recognized and won the award for the top new master plan in the state. I was joined by Bill Greta. Good to see Bill Greta. I hadn't seen him in a long time. Paige Duncan, Gordon Green, Diana Gray, Judy McCabe from and PIR representatives were there as well. So it was really well attended. And we were first off the bat to get recognized, so it was kind of a nice thing to see. So I actually saw a couple colleagues I hadn't seen in a long time, so it was good to see that. Construction of the Wasson Pavilion has begun. It's actually, the beams themselves are up, and they hope to be done, the roof structure by tomorrow. I'm not sure the steel will be on, the steel covering that was on that, or metal covering, that won't be on, I don't think, by tomorrow, but it's gonna get really cold in the next few days, so but at least the structure itself will be up.
Who's doing the construction on it?
A couple volunteers are
Okay.
doing it.
So it is like it was originally intended, like a
Yeah,
volunteer?
yeah, it's a volunteer group.
And it was
and,
cold out
it
there
was
today.
cold,
We
and they
went to
were-
see it, and they were working hard.
And there was a good crew over there, so
Yeah.
Bill Caspar was helping out as well as being the supervisor, so he did a nice job. So, then after he came back from that, he took us through on a tour, Mary Beth and I took a tour of the new town hall, making real great progress on that. The building is all fully enclosed. The stone on the front of the building is coming out spectacular. They did a really, really nice job. All the brick has been washed, acid wash, so it looks really, really nice. And the roof is they're buttoning up the roof. So I would think probably within the next week or two, they've already gotten everything petitioned off inside now, and a lot of the internal workings, like the heating system, the electrical system, is all they've all been roughed out. You can actually see some of the buildings starting to take shape, which is kind of exciting to see. So the stairways are all in. It's actually 3 floors. I mean, the 3rd floor is pretty much just mechanical, but it's really coming out really well.
You're
So.
still on track time-wise?
Still on track. We think, based on what Bill told me today, he said we're back on track as of today, so we should be, he's still looking at end of May, early June to move in, which would be good. And regional dispatch, I know that was mentioned as part of the presentation tonight. We're really active in those meetings right now. Had some really good meetings this past few weeks. What we're going to do is I'm going to provide you with the draft agreement at your meeting on the 27th, so we can actually talk about trying to address that. I don't expect you to sign it that night, but I want you to have it, and we're going to do a presentation for all 4 towns in January. We've been working on that piece of it, and it's really, really well done, by the way. It's all videotaped. It's an actual presentation, so it's really, really well done.
Are we gonna have a public meeting here?
We can I would recommend that you have the public meeting at that first, and then have a public meeting afterwards, and we can have a follow-up discussion with the
They're looking
with
to
the towns.
do all 4 towns centralized public meetings so that
It
the
might be
same
held in
questions
Mansfield
get
at this
answered
point.
and addressed in the exact same way.
Yeah.
So that, you know,
So there's no separation of,
Makes
no
sense.
no
rumors
different
don't fly
answers.
in another
Different
town
answers,
that,
right.
you know, so misinformation doesn't happen. So it's the presentation, the 4 boards of selectmen, the board of directors, which are town managers, chiefs, everybody would be there at the same time.
And we'd have that packet you're talking about ahead of that meeting?
Yes. Yeah, well, I'll actually give you the agreement, and I'll even give you, I don't know if we actually have we may have an actual PowerPoint that goes through that, and I can probably have that for you as well, so you can take a look at that. But it's
scheduled for sometime in January.
sometime in January. We haven't set the date yet.
It's
but-
funny, the 4 towns tried to find a night, and it was like, one board meets on Monday, one meets on Tuesday, one meets on Wednesday, and one meets on Thursday of the 4
Yeah.
towns.
So meet Tuesday. Makes sense to me.
So they're trying to find a.
Well, it's whoever
night.
hosts the meeting we're gonna have it on their night, so look right now.
Tuesday in the auditorium, yeah.
It's looking like, it's looking, because Mansfield's probably the most central to
I
everybody.
think Easton is actually where they're going to have it.
No, they backed off
They
of that.
did?
I think
Oh,
it's gonna be more in Mansfield, so.
And then they'll videotape that
So-
too, so that that informational meeting, in case people miss it. And we
So
talked
we
about
can
also
run
a
it on our
backup
local
date,
cable
doing it
systems.
twice.
And we do have a presentation we can actually then give to the local cable systems, so they can actually see it as well. But
Are you
it's been-
seeing opposition from the other 3 towns at all?
I have not personally seen the opposition. I think there is, I think we won't know until actually we make the presentation. And then, but it truly does make sense. I mean, and to have, and the fact the state's been attending some of our meetings to watch the way we've been conducting them, they said we are so far ahead of most communities because it's a very cohesive unit. I mean, you've seen it,
saw it, yeah.
It's a very cohesive unit. And everybody works really well together, including all 4 town managers, so.
Are we getting any internal pushback still, or is that eased up?
We're gonna have, I'm gonna go so far as to have an internal meeting with our own staff members, because I want them to be fully informed. But I've been inviting the member of the union as well as the communications director.
Yeah, they both were in
They've both been
attendance
attendance
at the last
at the
meeting.
meetings.
And
So-
they seem to be,
Well, they have
any of their
questions.
issues
I
satisfied?
think it's a
or-
little bit unnerving for them not
Yeah, it
knowing where
is.
the
Yeah.
future is.
It's understandable,
and,
you know.
about job security and all of that.
So the process on this, if we haven't seen the details on it,
Yep.
right? So all 4 selectmen groups get together?
Yep.
And then what's the process? We raise our hand and say yes or no, and that kills it?
I
or
think
brings
what'll
it forward?
happen then is that we'll give you the presentations, answer any questions we can back at your community, and then you take a vote, and whether you want to be part of it or not. But I think we would probably have the same subcommittee during the presentation present at each board to answer questions if you have any last-minute questions.
And it would be signing the governance agreement would
Some
be
of
the
the governance
final
agreement
step.
is the important piece.
So
Yeah.
collectively, we all sit together, get the information, then we come back here and have a public meeting
Yeah.
with the
With our own
constituents of
people,
Foxborough.
yeah.
So say Mansfield says no, Foxborough says yes, is it majority of the selectmen vote?
I think if
One vote
it
per
falls
town?
apart, it falls apart. I mean, I think right now it's built on 4 communities. We haven't talked about the possibility if only 3 went. We
Okay.
haven't discussed that. But we're actually having a budget subcommittee meet as early as next week to try and talk about what the budget would shape up to be.
Well, all the costs are based on 4 communities.
That's right.
So the cost
So
would
then it
significantly
would-
go up. if
It would,
it's-
it
if-
absolutely would, so. right now, it looks like it's reasonable but we have to really take a hard look at that to make sure.
What an interesting process when you're trying to regionalize something.
It is. It's like herding cats. It really is. It's not easy to do. But, and of course, I've been named the chairman of that group, so lucky me, right? So, but it's working out really well. I mean, I can tell you that we've got some terrific input from the city of Cambridge. Former personnel director Mike Gardner is working with us, as well as their communications director, they both have retired from Cambridge, and they've worked in 911 centers. And they have looked at our agreement, and they said they have very few comments, very few changes for us. Because they said it was really well done to begin with, and that we're really far along in the process. So they were very impressed by that. So I just wanted to leave that out to you, and I'll be back to you more on that and at the next meeting.
I just had two quick updates. Last week, we had 18 of our fine men and women of Foxborough PD participate in an assessment center over 3 days. Actually, it was 4 days because we had an orientation. So we had 6 candidates per day in an orientation where they all joined us on Monday. And they participated to, do exercises with the idea that, we'll create a list for future sergeants. And so we're just working through some of the feedback on that. The grades aren't in or anything like that, but it was a time-consuming effort, and everybody really put their best foot forward. I was fortunate I got to be in and out of it to see, some of the people, and we participated in the orientation as well. So it was great, and really proud of, how everyone sort of showed their best. We've got, we're in the final stages of some of our open positions that I've discussed before. We still have one part-time position open in recreation that we're looking at that closes this week. We've had probably 56 applicants for that. We have such a, active base. We have final interviews for DPW and our accounts payable coordinator. So things are moving along, even though it's the holidays. This tends to be a really slow time, but we're trying to keep it moving to fill those positions during this busy budget time. And finally, I had the pleasure of attending for the 3rd year in a row the retiree Friends of Foxborough Fire and Rescue, the retiree lunch. They do a turkey dinner every year, and this was my 3rd time attending. It's their 19th annual, and Father Steve was there to do the blessing, and it was just it's always such a really nice thing to see the retired firefighters and other
Police
retired
officers, too.
guests. Yeah, there were a couple of police officers there as well, and it was just a really nice time. Chief Baker and I attended. Jim Timmelty was there. It was really nice.
It's a different location this year because it was at the old Legion.
It's always been at the Legion, so this year was in the McGinty room.
They had a McGinty room this year. So.
But it was nice. That's funny. They had, on the screen, they had a fireplace like going. A video with the fireplace. It was very cozy. It was nice. But it was a great event, and I appreciate being invited, and it was nice to see everybody. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Action items?
Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $100 to the Council on Aging in memory of Priscilla Kennedy for programs at the Council of Aging, NHS, from Anonymous.
Second. Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $50 to the Council on Aging for programs and services from Jean Dyer.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $25 to the Council on Aging in memory of Carrie Barrows for programs from Jocelyn Tripp.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Move to approve an extended closing for Dimitri's Nick's Steakhouse on New Year's Eve, 12/31/16.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Even open?
Yeah, I don't know if he must be if he asks for this, but
Yeah.
usually there's a condition that they can stay open later, and it's not to serve alcohol, it's to serve food.
Well, we can only serve alcohol to a certain point statewide.
Yeah, but if he's asking to stay open, it's not because he's serving hamburgers, it's because he's got a liquor license, right?
Don't they send a letter out explaining that?
That's my point. We usually send
In the past.
correspondence that says you can stay later, but it's not to continue serving later, it's to let the people wind down and eat something. So,
Okay, after 1 o'clock? Or,
it's kind of an unusual letter, because he hasn't asked for times or anything.
No, no, I was gonna ask
No,
about
and
that.
he does that all the time. It's probably the same letter with a different date. The letter that we send out explains everything.
yeah,
I've done that before.
Yep.
okay.
Oh, here's the approval letter from 2015.
Oh, okay, so there is.
Yeah.
No, that's the other one. Right?
But that's the form letter.
That's the form letter to him.
Yeah.
For extended operating hours, January 1st, then the early openings.
Yeah, this is a 2-for-1 letter.
So can we condition the approval as per this letter?
Last year's letter.
I would.
Just instruct us to,
Yeah,
As part of the motion
that
or
in
just
order.
instruction?
yeah, just to
Yeah,
follow the
no
same.
alcohol after 12:30, and it's, the extension is from 1 AM to 2 AM.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Just follow the same guidelines. Unless
So
you feel
move,
differently. Yeah, whatever it
okay.
says.
At this point,
No, I'll start again.
At this point, I want to go.
Move to approve an extension of closing hours for Dimitri's Nick's Steakhouse on New Year's Eve, 12/31/16, with the, following the same protocols as the letter we sent out last year.
Second.
Motion made, seconded for clarification. No alcohol will be served past 12:30
Yeah.
a.m. And the opening will be allowed to, they'll be allowed to stay open until 2 a.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve an 11 a.m. early opening request for 2017 for all New England Patriots Sunday home games, for Easter on 4/16/17, Mother's Day 5/14/17, and Father's Day 6/18/17 for Dimitri's / Nick's Steakhouse, following the same protocol as last year's letter.
Second.
Motion made, convoluted. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve an early opening on Saturday and Sundays in 2017 for Lakeview Pavilion.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve the 2017 licenses.
Second.
That was a long list we got.
Want to read them all?
Individually?
Whatever the chairman desires.
Alphabetized.
Good luck with that. Can I go home?
Alphabetize it by street.
We can just approve
The
them
board,
as.
the list as presented.
The list as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Are these available for signature yet?
Not tonight.
they're being printed,
They're
so
being printed, so
we'll
we'll-
send an email when
Marcia
they're
said
ready.
she'll let you guys know, something
Yeah.
We'll try not to send it out December
That's the group that we
31st.
usually come in and sit down and sign for an hour.
We get
And you have
writer's cramp.
coffee and donuts for us.
We get writer's cramp, yeah, coffee donuts,
Yeah, chocolate.
munchkins.
There you go.
Make a
Anything else?
motion, we close the selectmen's meeting.
Move to close, second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.